I'm a slave, call me a slave. Don't tell me that I'm a free person and I'm still a slave. Yeah, that really lulls me to sleep. You're not really a slave, you know. You're a co-worker. You know, you're a member of the firm, you know. This is the Bodie plantation, you know. And you are one of our business associates. Now, get that plow moving.
More than 12 million Africans were enslaved during the transatlantic slave trade. Over the centuries, most were taken to the Americas, while millions of others died along the way. Today, monuments to this brutal history still stand along the coast of West Africa. But as NPR's Emmanuel Akinwotu reports in the fourth installment of our series along a rapidly developing West African coastline, some fear that preservation and commercialization are increasingly in conflict.
The Atlantic waves crash at the foot of the towering white walls of Elmina Castle, Ghana. It's one of several slave forts dotted along the coast in West and Central Africa. Inside, a tour guide leads a group of 20 people.
And about 150 female enslaved Africans were shared in this dungeon, or were kept here.
His voice echoes across the cobbled courtyard, and in the surrounding dungeons where enslaved people were kept and tortured.
The materials we see here were all brought by people who visit the castle to pay homage to their ancestors.
Inside the cells, flowers have been laid to rest on the ground, once coated in layers of excrement and blood, which has slowly softened it over time. For decades, these monuments have drawn a growing number of visitors from the African diaspora connecting to their histories.
So please, before we leave here, if you want to pray to the ancestors, say anything, or even take a picture of how we look at this place, you can do that before we see the next place.
But in recent years, interest in the legacy of slavery has surged. Ghana's 2019 year of return brought over 1 million mostly black diaspora visitors, generating billions of dollars according to the government. Its success has spurred other West African countries to explore the economic potential of these historic sites. All along the coastline from Nigeria to Ivory Coast, government projects to develop these monuments are rapidly taking shape. And of all of them, the most expansive and ambitious plans are in the historic city of Ouidah, Benin, where the government is building La Marina. Slick video adverts show digital projections of what will become a vast tourism and memorial complex, complete with luxury hotels, pools and spas, and a performance arena for Vodou, the indigenous religion in Benin. And at its heart is a life-size replica of a slave ship. It's all been built with investments including from China and constructed by China's state-owned construction company.
Actuellement, le gouvernement
The government is currently investing heavily in tourism, so there are a lot of renovations, which means that when people come, they want to come back.
Odrio Gomez is a tour guide in Ouidah. He's a descendant of formerly enslaved people who returned from Brazil and serves on a local committee advising the government. He welcomes the new development and describes how the site is being reconfigured. Workers are paving parts of the grounds around the Tree of Oblivion, where enslaved people were made to forget their identity. Weathered plaques and monuments are being restored or even replaced. And a new gate will mark a fresh point of no return on the Atlantic shore, replacing the current beachfront archway. But the development has not been welcomed by everyone.
It's very commodified, it's Disney World, there's no dignity and humanity in the project.
Dr. Dominique Somda is an anthropologist at Kalamazoo College in Michigan. She was raised in Benin and has spent years studying African slave forts. She said tourism in countries like Benin, where they're making a concerted push to attract visitors, has a complicated legacy.
It will be very interesting to see in the future how tourists are actually responding to those new infrastructures, right? Is that what they are actually looking for? Are they looking for example, a replica of slave ships?
All along our 600-mile journey from Nigeria to Ivory Coast, former slave forts have formed a string of historical touchpoints for visitors exploring the legacy of the transatlantic slave trade. But in places like Benin, some are asking whether the balance between preservation and profit is tilting. Emmanuel Akinwotu, NPR News, Benin.
Our top story today is from Zimbabwe. White farmers in the southern African country have turned to US President Donald Trump for help. They have sought Trump's intervention in getting $3.5 billion that the Zimbabwean government owes them. What is this compensation for? And how is Donald Trump involved in it? Well, let's break it down. The dispute dates back to the year 2000. Zimbabwe's then President Robert Mugabe had signed a controversial land expropriation program. It was supposed to redistribute land to disadvantaged black Zimbabweans to boost equity and agricultural development. But it turned out to be a failure. Between the years 2000 and 2001, the government seized land from some 4,000 white farmers. The land seizures were at times forceful, violent, and even deadly. At least 7 farmers were killed. The country's economy was weakened as well. Farming output dropped significantly, causing food supply chains to dry up. The political elite, including Mugabe's family, was involved in corruption. They acquired large swathes of land for rent. After the major program failure and deadly violence, several Western nations, including the United States, sanctioned Zimbabwe. In 2017, Mugabe was removed from office, and President Emerson Mnangagwa took charge. Then, in 2020, the government agreed to pay white farmers compensation of $3.5 billion. But the government has consistently missed payment deadlines because of economic constraints. And it was not before last year that the Zimbabwean government sprung into action. In April 2025, the government announced that it had finally started paying compensation to the affected white farmers. The action was some 25 years late. But there was a Trump factor involved here. The move came just a few days after Trump imposed an 18% tariff on Zimbabwe. Later in August, it was reduced to 15%. But right after Trump slapped tariffs on Zimbabwe, the country took quick action decisions to seemingly appease him. And one of them was ending tariffs on all imports from the US.
In the spirit of constructing a mutually beneficial and positive relationship with the United States of America, under the leadership of President Trump, I will direct the Zimbabwean government to implement a suspension of all tariffs levied on goods originating from the United States. This measure is intended to facilitate the expansion of American imports within the Zimbabwean market while simultaneously promoting the growth of Zimbabwean exports destined for the United States.
And coming back to the white farmers, problems regarding the compensation still remain. They have accused the government of paying way less than what it had claimed, which is why the farmers have now sought Trump's help. A US lobbying group has vowed to present the case of the farmers before American officials and to actively secure Washington's support for facilitating the payment of compensation. Donald Trump has long claimed that white farmers in South Africa have faced discrimination. He even went to make unsubstantiated claims of a so-called white genocide in South Africa. One of the reasons why Trump imposed a 30% tariff on Pretoria has been its land reform laws. Pretoria introduced the laws to redress the legacy of apartheid, but Trump called them racist. While the US president has reduced overall refugee admissions, he has given priority to Afrikaners who allegedly faced discrimination in South Africa. Will Donald Trump take a similar action for the Zimbabwean white farmers who are seeking his help? Well, joining us to explore this further is Patrick Bond, a political economist and distinguished professor at the University of Johannesburg, joining us live from Johannesburg. Welcome to First Post Africa.
Yeah, it's good to be with you. Thank you, Joshua.
Could you provide us some context of how this issue is being seen domestically within Zimbabwe and also in the wider Southern Africa region?
Well, you know, because white farming dominance, along with control of much of business until around 2000, really meant that Robert Mugabe, the former president who was overthrown in a 2017 coup by Emerson Mnangagwa, he really was not his own man. He couldn't really move on the land. It was in the year 2000 that, after he lost this constitutional referendum, that he realized that one of the strategies would be a left-wing populist land reform approach. And look, to be frank, they did distribute about 250,000 households some access to white farmers' land. There were about 4,000 white farmers at peak, and it went down to about 900. A few hundred have come back since Mnangagwa has been more conciliatory. But that means, as you've said, the corrupt elites who've mismanaged the farms haven't brought the agricultural sector back up to where it was. I must say the one exception being tobacco, and the Chinese market really opened up. So I think because most of these white farmers, having now 26 years of being basically thrown off the land that they had occupied since about 1890 in their kith and kin, their heritage. But there are so few of them still left, and most of those in their 60s, 70s, 80s. And so it's really a question of whether they're going to get cash, and that means US dollars, not Zimbabwean bonds or the Zimbabwe gold currency, which isn't much use. And that means, I think, probably many of the people who are really suffering, especially with very severe climate change impacts, probably won't be very happy to see these few farmers getting such a large amount, $3.5 billion, if that deal is ever brought to consummation. So far, I understand it's about $300 million that's been really earmarked, and only a few million have been handed over. And don't forget, Zimbabwe has a $21 billion foreign debt that it can't service. It's in default.
Patrick, I want to look at potential intervention from US President Donald Trump. Given the fact that discussions over tariffs have been constructive between Zimbabwe and the US, do you see Trump taking a similar line to the one that he has with Ramaphosa and their government over white farmers in the country and alleged mistreatment?
Well, again, because the numbers are so small, I doubt it. And of course, the geopolitical relationships are much different. Don't forget that it was when South Africa was beginning its G20 hosting about a year ago that Trump really started to come down hard. And his foreign minister, Marco Rubio, said that the themes of the G20 that was held here last November were basically alienating to this right-wing Trump regime. And I think the main problem for Zimbabwe is they just don't have any, the white Zimbabwean farmers, any similar clout to go against the government the way here in South Africa, about 67,000 white farmers. And the white farmers especially trying to negotiate for Afrikaner minority rights, cultural rights, and language rights, and to stop any potential expropriation of their land. That it really is it's a very, very different context. And I think what we've been seeing in the business press is some alarm raised that the Trump government may be called in by these lobbyists that are close to him, working free for white Zimbabwean farmers. But wow, we've got so many other things, and so does Donald Trump, isn't he? Scattered around the world with many sites of conflict. Probably Zimbabwe isn't going to be one for a while, unless his MAGA base really wants to ramp up their own sort of racially tinged, arguments about why whites need to be protected from blacks. I mean, that's something you probably will find as a constant in some of that U.S. politics.
And Patrick, to finish, I want to look more broadly at the region and Trump's words and actions. Does this topic and discussion in Zimbabwe in any way validate some of Trump's comments on the treatment of white people in the wider region?
Yeah, I think actually it is.
Sorry, after you.
And I think the main problem is that Donald Trump has played race politics, and he has done it in a very crude way, and he continues to do it, even in Davos this week. And his attempt to say there's a white genocide has left him with zero credibility. The dilemma is that you do have quite a few people in the region that want to do deals, and our South African trade minister and some of the businessmen, especially in iron and steel and aluminium and cars and some of the areas that were hard hit. And I must say, Afrikaner farmers probably want to get better access, since they were suddenly hit with a 30% tariff on their vineyard products, the wine and the grapes. So it's quite complicated and full of contradictions, as you'd expect. I don't think the factors of Zimbabwe's long tradition of trying to get some social justice in the rural areas, but at the same time having done it so badly from the year 2000 with the Jambanja land reform and the production of output going down very steeply and U.S. aid coming in. This is a very mixed record. It's not the kind of record that anyone really can be proud of, and I think Donald Trump is going to stumble if he tries to get involved in both Zimbabwean and South African land reform issues.
Patrick Bond, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing such great insight.
Thank you.
1 year ago, a fast-moving, catastrophic wildfire in the Pacific Palisades killed at least a dozen people, burned to the ground thousands of homes and businesses, and upended countless lives. One of the people who lost everything is Ms. Lavinia Jenkins. She's now 97 years old, and she's living in an apartment in Culver City. She's doing okay, she says. Fate had its way with her, she says. 1 year later, we checked in on Ms. Jenkins in her new and seemingly temporary environment. It's a far cry from her neighborhood of decades where she was the first black person to own a home.
I lived in Pacific Palisades for more than 69 years. I had worked very hard to get a home, and in one moment, all was gone. And now, faced with the possibility I could be homeless if my retirement and other little gifts that come my way run out.
Do you mind me asking about that day and what it was like for you?
I was at my computer. Meanwhile, while I'm getting the calls to evacuate, I called my companion caregiver and told her not to come because it looked pretty bad. And before I looked up, she was at the door. I grabbed a couple things, I said, go knock on the door of the neighbors, tell them we're leaving. And we left.
Do you have insurance? Have they taken care of you?
I don't want to even talk about insurance. They've let me down as they have let others down.
You don't want to talk about it at all?
What I could say about the insurance company, as in my case, not for those other people, but each person has a different story. What they're saying is, if you rebuild, we'll give you this. But, I mean, meanwhile, you're without any guarantee that you're going to have anything. So I'm just in no man's land. I mean, where I'm living is very costly, and they're going up 8% every year. And I have a very small retirement, and it doesn't cover the rent here. So that means it depends on how many more years I live in terms of how I will be able to live or where I'll be able to live under these circumstances.
What about family, friends?
I have wonderful friends. I have wonderful family. I never married. I don't have children. So I have to rely on me. And I wouldn't rely on anybody else. I've been very independent. That's why I have done well in my life. I'm doing fine right now. I rely on the goodwill of those who are still in my life, who care about me. And in fact, I was a volunteer at Getty Museum for more than 25 years. And one of the volunteers there.
Ms. Jenkins became emotional thinking of what that volunteer did for her, giving her $100, and all the other people who helped her with money, with clothing, and with well wishes. She says it meant a lot and brought some light to her life in this very dark time.
It's such a strange feeling. I mean, it's like a nightmare. It's hard to even describe. You don't even really realize you're in this kind of situation. And there are moments when you reach up for something, you think you have it, and you think, oh, I don't have that anymore. Where is it? It's a feeling of loss that I don't think you'll ever recover from.
Do you foresee yourself going back to the Palisades at any time?
I don't see myself going back there at all. One of the reasons, it'll never be the same. Secondly, not having enough money to rebuild the way I would have to rebuild, the cost being higher and whatever. I don't see any way that that'll happen. We don't know why we're here, do we? Do you know why you're here?
Ooh, I struggle with that every day.
And I don't know why I'm here. I don't think any of us know why we're here. But we are here for a purpose. And whatever purpose that is may have had something to do with the fire, which I don't know. I don't place the blame on anyone. I place the blame on fate. No man is an island either. We're all in this together. We all have to face it together, and we do in our own way.
Ms. Lavinia Jenkins, thank you so much. It's so nice to meet you. Lavinia Jenkins, whose home burned to the ground in the Palisades fire more than a year ago. Her family continues to run a GoFundMe page to help her get back on her feet. We have a link to that fundraiser at our website, kcrw.com.
120 years of history suddenly destroyed.
5 churches with black congregations have burned in Alabama this year. Look at some of the damage in Greene County.
This is one of dozens of southern, predominantly black churches that burned within the last year and a half.
Torched this church in the nearby
President Clinton now wants to know if the fires are racially motivated.
What's painful to me, as we look at the story today, they're burning churches again.
5 years ago, an arsonist set fire to a church named after Martin Luther King Jr. in Springfield, Massachusetts. Prosecutors called it a hate crime. Today is the first Martin Luther King Jr. holiday since that church was rebuilt, and spiritual leaders see a chance to focus on forgiveness and rebirth. Karen Brown of New England Public Media takes us there.
This is the day. This is the day that the Lord has made.
In December, 3 days after Christmas, the service at Martin Luther King Jr. Community Presbyterian Church started with the spiritual "This is the Day." Here's Reverend Terilyn Curry Avery.
So just breathe in for a moment this space that we are sitting in, where 5 years ago, something sought to take us out and to silence our voice, but here we stand.
On December 28, 2020, parishioners woke up to the news that their church, which opened in 1979, was burning. Lisa Baker, a church elder, remembers rushing to the building.
And when I came here, I could still see the flames, and it was surreal.
Investigators determined the cause was arson, and the suspect, Dushko Volchev, was a white supremacist from Maine. He's in federal custody. No one was hurt, and at the time, services were already on Zoom due to COVID. But Curry Avery says it was still a gut punch.
You know, we had to just kind of sit with the hurt of a faith community being burned down.
The pain came not just from this fire, but decades of hate crimes against black churches, from the 1963 Birmingham bombing that killed 4 girls, to another arson in Springfield in 2008, to the massacre at a Charleston, South Carolina church a decade ago.
I'm not saying that this was just another event, because it was not. It was horrific, and things that we still have to work through, the trauma of that. But I think because of the history in this country, because of the power and strength of our ancestors, that is what we leaned on to get through this.
Victory is mine. Victory is mine.
That resilience, she says, helped the small congregations stay together as they rebuilt, using insurance money, grants, and donations. They held services in parking lots, community centers, and other churches. In their new church building, the fire is still very much on their minds.
Fire does not always come to destroy. Sometimes fire comes to reveal, refine, and compel.
The legal process has been lengthy as prosecutors pursue hate crime charges. Parishioners say they're hoping for a conviction, but working on forgiveness.
Amen. The doors of the church are open. Let us sing, I need you to survive. I need you.
Amid the joy of reopening, Curry Avery does worry something bad could happen again, so they've increased security.
But I'm not going to come in every Sunday and wonder if the person who's sitting in the back of the church is here to do harm. Faith is taking each step of the way, as Martin Luther King said, even when you can't see the stairwell in front of you, the next step.
I need you to survive. Hallelujah.
For Dr. King's birthday this year, the church was finally able to host a worship service in their own sanctuary, named after the man himself. For NPR News, I'm Karen Brown in Springfield, Massachusetts.
The Turner Diaries. Sold over 500,000 copies. Who do you think is buying it? Eric Rudolph?
The Olympic bomber, Wei Page, who shut up the Sikh temple, Larry Ford, developing typhoid and cholera, William Carr with the cyanide bomb, anthrax, ricin, botulism, C4, IEDs. I could go on like this for hours, and all of them are white supremacists.
Back in 1992, federal agents surrounded the home of a U.S. citizen in Idaho. What happened next not only shocked the nation, but it drove a change in federal policy when it came to the use of deadly force. And now, some 3 decades later, there are once again questions about agents' use of deadly force after an immigration enforcement officer fatally shot Renee Macklin Good in Minneapolis. For more on what happened in 1992 and why it's so relevant today, we're joined by NPR's domestic extremism correspondent Odette Youssef. Hi there.
Hey, Juana.
Odette, remind us what happened in northern Idaho all those years ago.
Right. Well, the incident is often referred to as Ruby Ridge, and it involved a man named Randall Weaver and his family. Federal agents were after Weaver for not showing up to court in a case where he was charged with selling 2 sawed-off shotguns to an undercover ATF agent. And things culminated over 2 days in August that year. Armed federal agents were stationed around Weaver's cabin in the woods, and they'd been given orders for that mission to shoot any armed adult male. And in the end, 3 people died: a deputy U.S. Marshal, Weaver's 14-year-old son, and Weaver's wife. And of course, none of them were the intended target of the operation. And so this affair became a seminal moment for the far right. It was representative of fears around federal government overreach, lawlessness, and abuse of power.
And how did this incident end up shifting federal policy?
Well, initially it didn't. The immediate assessment of the FBI was that it was a job well done. But that didn't quiet public concern. And so ultimately there was a tremendous reevaluation, not only of the specifics of the standoff, but also the institutional factors that made it possible. And 3 years later, the Department of Justice issued its first ever written, uniform, and department-wide policy on the use of deadly force. Here's then Deputy Attorney General Jamie Gorelick sharing the new policy during a Senate subcommittee hearing.
Under the new policy, law enforcement and corrections officers may use deadly force only when the officer has a reasonable belief that the subject of such force poses an imminent danger of death or serious physical injury to the officer or another person. Deadly force may not be used if an alternative reasonably appears to be sufficient to accomplish the law enforcement purpose.
And that qualification at the end there, Juana, that there has to be no reasonable alternative to deadly force is notable.
What's significant about that?
Well, I spoke to John Cox about this. He's a retired FBI agent who started at the agency just a few months after the new policy took effect.
So it actually restricted when you could use deadly force in accordance with the policy because you were elevating and honoring human life, and that's what you were trying to preserve. So there were instances where maybe constitutionally you could use deadly force, but the policy said no.
Now, in the context of the Minneapolis incident, there's been no meaningful scrutiny so far of whether the officer had a reasonable alternative to deadly force. And that may be because immigration enforcement falls under a completely different department, the Department of Homeland Security, which does not require a no safe alternative provision.
And how might things be different if the Department of Homeland Security's policy did require this idea of no safe alternative that we're talking about?
Well, Cox said that standard might prompt questions about why the officer stood in front of Macklin Good's car and whether stepping out of the way would have changed the risk to the agent and others. But, to me, Juana, reporting on extremism, it's interesting that the DOJ established its standard as a result of a standoff in 1992 with the Weaver family, which held far-right, anti-government, white separatist beliefs.
How so?
Weaver believed that he was set up by federal agents because he had refused to become an informant for them. He said they were trying to recruit him to help them infiltrate Aryan Nations, which was an Idaho-based neo-Nazi organization. Weaver had attended a handful of their conferences. And at congressional subcommittee hearings 3 years later, some legislators had pointed questions for him about whether he had items like with swastikas in his home, for example. But that did not seem to affect an apparent bipartisan consensus that something had gone very seriously wrong in that operation. In the Minneapolis incident, it's quite different. This administration at the outset characterized Macklin Good's activities at the scene as domestic terrorism, even before the facts were fully known. And so there's clearly no bipartisan consensus that there should be some examination of the underlying policies that factored into what happened there.
NPR's Odette Youssef, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Never let the man that you're against form your opinions. This is the trick that's played on everyone who's oppressed. When you have a revolution in the country, the first thing you take over is the radio. And then you start telling the people, everybody, the war is over. And so all of them surrender. No, they believe that thing right there. And once they take that over, they start telling you where you are and where they are, and you fall right in line. It's plain thought control.
Well, next month, Milwaukee Film is teaming up with a Milwaukee journalist to present a documentary highlighting the voices of the black press. It's called Black Press, Soldiers Without Swords, and it is a free screening. And we're happy to welcome this afternoon Robin Ehrlich from Milwaukee Film, along with Naisha Stone, founder of Carved in Stone, a company dedicated to uplifting and promoting positive news here in our community. Ladies, good afternoon to you. Robin, I want to start with you. Soldiers Without Swords, that is something that certainly grabs your attention. I imagine this film will do the same for viewers.
Yeah, it's an incredible title, and it's a powerful documentary that actually Naisha brought to our attention at Milwaukee Film. So I had not previously heard of it, but once we saw it, we realized that it was extremely powerful and moving and an important thing to screen. So we were really excited that this opportunity came to us.
And one of the quotes from the trailer says, the black press never pretended to be objective because it didn't see the white press being objective. This was oppressive advocacy. There was news, but the news had an admitted and deliberate slant. Kind of take us into this film and what it covers for viewers.
Do you want to
yes,
talk about it?
Either or.
Oh yeah, definitely, yes. So the reason I discovered this film in college, when I was doing research for, I think, like a research paper, and it was right at the same time I was starting Carved in Stone. So it showed me right away the power of being a part of the black press and what we done. So it talks about the Chicago Defender and all the black press and how they helped with the migration from down south to up north, how they spoke for us, how they talked about our graduations and just gave us light because white papers weren't covering black people at the time. And so I always wanted a way to show this documentary in some type of light. And finally, I was like, we've been working with Milwaukee Film for a while, covering their film festival and just building our relationship. And so now with Carved in Stone bringing back events, I was like, this is the perfect time. Let's partner up. I want to bring this film and really talk about the importance of black journalists and just journalism overall, because we don't always get the spotlight that we deserve. So I wanted to bring this to a bigger light, and Milwaukee Film allowed me to partner up with them, use their venue, and really show who and what black press is. And
Naisha, I know you're going to be moderating a discussion after the film on this topic. Who are going to be your guest panelists, and what important questions do you really want to delve into with the panel?
Yeah, so we have 6 panelists. One of them is Shannon Sims. She's was a former anchor of TMJ4. And then we also have a moderator, Dawn Montgomery, who is coming to Milwaukee from the Black Press USA. So that's an actual newspaper that's still going on. That's black owned, black press. And so the overall goal of this talk back is to highlight what we're currently doing now as black journalists and as black press, why we're doing what we're doing, and then also how the community can support us, because it's really important that we focus on who we're getting our news from, who is that byline from, and sometimes a lot of the community that we support isn't always the people that look like us, and so we have to make sure that we're highlighting and bringing a spotlight to black press. So this talk back is to be like, hey, these are the local black press that are in the city. Meet them, engage with them, send them your stories, and figure out how you can support us.
And Nyesha, I know you are the founder and owner of Carved in Stone, and today is an important date for your company. Share that with our viewers and really the mission you had when you started this company.
Wow. Carved in Stone, I started when I was 20 years old. I'll be 30 this year, so it's our 9-year anniversary. And I started it because when I look up Milwaukee, you see that people are shooting. You see people stealing cars. People say a lot of negative things about the Black community. And when I was in college, I'm like, I see so many creatives. I see so many people like me just wanting to give back to the city. So I created Carved in Stone to highlight the positive things around Milwaukee. Now we've grown to be in Atlanta, to give away scholarships, to throw events. This is our first time doing an important panel like this. But honestly, I can't believe I made it to this point. So many people told me that positive news didn't matter. And now we're 9 years in, and to have a partner like Milwaukee Film, like Robin, a lot of people didn't want to work with us. A lot of people didn't understand our mission, but Milwaukee Film has really been there and supporting us. So coming to them with this idea, Robin was like, yes, like 100%, let's do this. It was no questions asked.
And real quickly, Robin, what do you want folks to walk away from watching this film and the discussion?
Oh my gosh. I think I just want them to see like this rich history, that it's not this film came out in 1999, so this isn't very recent, but it's still extremely modern and extremely relevant today. So I think just like I want them to see this long history and feel inspired to continue it.
Absolutely, ladies. Thank you. Robin Ehrlich, Nyesha Stone, thank you so much this afternoon. The film is titled The Black Press, Soldiers Without Words. The free screening is February 11th at the Oriental Theater in Milwaukee. Ladies, thank you for joining us here.
Black babies cost less.
A few years ago, a small private school in an underprivileged Black community in Louisiana, the T.M. Landry College Preparatory Academy, made national headlines for propelling student after student into elite universities like Harvard and Yale. But as New York Times journalists Katie Benner and Erica Green report in their new book, Miracle Children, the school's success was built on lies and threats. I spoke with Benner and Green and began by asking what led them to look into this school.
It was very unusual because I was covering the Justice Department at the time, but Eric and I had both seen the viral videos when they were on all over social media, and like everybody else in the country, we were so excited about these students getting into Harvard and Princeton and Stanford, Yale, etc. And part of the reason we were excited about it is because they were Black students just achieving the highest heights. Mm-hmm. So when I got a call from a source, actually a former DOJ source, who said that she had heard that something else was happening at the school, that there was misconduct, that there might be an abusive situation, and that the students themselves were being manipulated by their teachers to lie about their lives in order to get into these elite schools. I called Erica immediately. She was our education policy reporter. Mm-hmm. And I said, I think this is a real story. You would know better, though. You cover education, but this feels like it's the kind of story that tells us a lot about race in America.
Erica, I'd imagine with so many people invested in the school and invested in selling that story, it might be hard to get people to talk to you about it. Was it?
Believe it or not, this was a rare case in my career where we had droves of people ready to talk about it. And that is what gave us this sense of urgency. There were families who had, collected stories about what was transpiring in the school over a few months. They were prying information out of their children that was very disturbing. And they reached out for help in their own communities, got none, and they banded together and decided that they wanted to talk to the Times.
There's so many compelling stories in here I want to get into in more detail, but Katie, for anyone unfamiliar, just briefly, what was the fraud being perpetrated here by the school founders, the couple that ran the school? That's Mike and Tracy Landry.
Right. So first, I think we need to say that Mike and Tracy Landry, the founders of the school, have denied all wrongdoing. Mm-hmm. So all of our reporting in the book and the original New York Times story is based on legal documents, court records, police records, and the interviews with students that corroborate one another. But what the students had been forced to do was to lie about their lives and to lean into really negative stereotypes about Black America on their college applications, to say that they had been homeless, that their parents had been addicted to drugs, and all sorts of other really terrible things. because Mike and Tracy told them that's what white admissions officers wanted from black people. They also suffered a lot of psychological, emotional, and physical violence at that school to keep them in line. For Mike and Tracy, they were making money, you know, they were charging tuition, and they had a lot of admissions offices at some of the most elite colleges in the country adoring them. And one of the things they did to keep the students in line was say, if you expose us, if you tell anybody, we will make sure you do not get into your dream school. You're not going to get into MIT. You won't get into Yale. We will rescind your application.
Erica, take us inside the mindset of some of these families. Obviously the ones you met with who wanted to speak out about this, who were in some sense ostracized because they wanted to speak out. But the many families that some folks may look at and say, why did they let their kids continue to participate in this?
You know, for them, they brokered a deal with Mike. He said, give me your children, give me your most precious commodity, and I'm going to take them further than you ever could. He very much preyed and seized on this deficit model that has existed for decades, but he seized on their fears and their vulnerabilities, whether, you know, it was that they had not gone to college themselves, or they couldn't afford to send their kids to college, or they couldn't even guide them through the process. So he really did just hit, you know, every vulnerability that they had as, you know, working class, predominantly black families in a very low income part of one of the poorest states in the country. At the end of the day, they were seeing results. They saw the viral videos that were being eaten up by celebrities, by the First Lady of the United States. So, you know, it's not like it was, you know, just a gamble. It was an equation.
I mean, it was your article for the New York Times that blew it all up, that called attention to this. But Katie, the book really grounds it, not just in what happened and in more storytelling and in more perspectives, but in historical context. Why is that necessary here?
I think that we have to understand that the country has fought oftentimes in schoolhouses about whether or not it wants to have a racial hierarchy or not. Education is one of the most powerful tools to allow us to widen the circle of who gets to be an American or to close it off. And so understanding that history helps us understand why the students were making some of the choices they were making, why they felt cut off from educational opportunity, and even why we were cheering so hard for these black students to get into Stanford or Yale and not questioning what that says about our expectations of black Americans writ large. You know, one of the lawyers who worked with the students said, would we have been cheering like this? Would these videos have gone viral if the students in the videos had been white and getting into Stanford? Or if they've been black and been getting into a state school? Like, what is that telling us about who we are?
Erica, what do you want people to take away from this book?
You know, I think what we really hope is that people really, you know, self-reflect about their own expectations of black children. I think we, you know, have to question what we demand of them to just, you know, achieve opportunities and the kinds of American dreams that are handed to other groups of children on a silver platter. And also, you know, we have to just recognize that this is, you know, opportunity has become transactional. And for a certain subset of Americans, that means you can pay to get your way into an Ivy League or an elite college. And for black children, they're paying with their dignity. Their price has become higher, and we all have to ask ourselves why. And the big takeaway for me is that, you know, black children do not have to be damaged to be valuable.
The book is Miracle Children: Race, Education, and the True Story of False Promises. The authors are Erica Green and Katie Benner. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would like to ask you a question that goes back to about 30, 40 years ago. Back in Little Rock, Arkansas, if you were in the same position that you are now, and during the time of the occurrence of the Little Rock 9, how would you take forth the matters about them going into the school? Would you go with the community, or would you go with your heart?
Boy, that's a tough
I would have gone with my heart and with the law of the United States, which was that the children had a right to go to the school without regard to their race. I would have done what President Eisenhower did. I would have sent troops there and done whatever it took to give the children the right to go to school.
On this Martin Luther King Day, we turn for some wisdom to Minnie Jean Brown Trickey, one of the original members of the Little Rock Nine, the teenagers who integrated Central High School after the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education ruling. Tonight, she shares her brief but spectacular take on her hope for the next generation.
When I look at pictures at Central, I see me smiling. That was also a strategy. The nature of racism, hatred, all those things is to dim your smile, dim your beauty, dim every aspect of you, and I wasn't going to let them do it to me. We were harassed every day, inspiring brave, we turned away, heads held high, we walked the halls, and I walked like I belonged. Oh, yes, like I belong. Little Rock Nine.
In the fall of 1957, Minnie Jean Brown Trickey took her rightful place in what had previously been a whites-only school, and she helped set America on a path towards desegregation in public schools. Please rise and give a very warm and loving welcome to Miss Minnie Jean Brown Trickey.
Honestly, in a million years, I could not have anticipated what it was going to be like. I actually rely on the photos. The people screaming hatred behind us and the soldiers not letting us go in. Also, the horror of what people were screaming and saying. I was so scared. They were saying, hang them. They were saying, kill them. I saw them, and I said to myself, I will never behave like that for any reason toward anyone as long as I live. I was a kid who was told that our enemy was the Soviets and we were hiding under the desks, and I was doing all the anthems and singing all the songs. And then on that day, I was really disappointed, and I just lost so much of my beliefs.
Charlie H. wanted to know what gave you the courage to walk the halls every day.
There were 20 nice kids who would either speak to us or smile at us. There were about 300 really mean kids, but then that meant there were 1,700 silent witnesses who stood by and said nothing. So if you're walking through terror, if somebody smiles with a genuine smile, you're feeling, oh, there's hope. There's hope. What makes me interested in interacting with young people is because I know who I was, and I value that in young people. I just want them to know that they are capable of so much, and that they don't have to tolerate things the way they are. We have kids who have families who are being picked up and brutalized by ICE. I'm not sure if it was like that for me. So my so-called courage is small compared to what they have to come up with in their everyday lives, and I want them to feel up to the challenge.
We have heard that you were especially targeted of all the nine, so I was wondering if you could expound on perhaps why.
A sociologist did interviews with white women about their experience at Central, and they said, we hated that Minnie Jean so much. She walked the halls of Central like she belonged there. This is what people said. Excuse me, wherever you walk like you belong there, okay? That is my challenge to you, okay? Walk like you belong, because you do. My name is Minnie Jean Brown Trickey, and this is my brief but spectacular take on walking like you belong.
I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess. inside.
Food contaminated with worms and mold, limited access to clean drinking water, inadequate medical care. These are a few of the allegations made by migrant families in recent court documents about their children's conditions while in ICE custody. As part of this administration's crackdown on immigration, President Trump has restored the practice of family detention, with more than 1,700 children in custody since family detention centers reopened this past spring. Becky Wallesen is a senior lawyer with the National Center for Youth Law and joins us now. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
President Trump says the border is effectively closed. If that's the case, how are these children and families still ending up in custody? Who are they?
So we've seen a lot of different trends happen since they first reopened family detention in April. But now a lot of families are being arrested from the interior of the United States. So these are your neighbors, your friends, your kids' friends, who are being picked up in a lot of different ways, really from across the country.
And you've been inside the South Texas Family Residential Center in Dilley, where families are being held. Your organization has sued the federal government, alleging inadequate food, medical care, education, and safety. What were the most striking examples you witnessed that illustrate those failures?
Well, there are really profound problems with basic needs like food and water. So we have seen and heard a lot of things about children not getting child-friendly food, not being able to eat what's offered. As you mentioned, people reported vegetables that were moldy or had worms in them. People have gotten sick following meals. And there's really not food that's appropriate for small children. So, for example, one mother told us that in order to try and get her child to eat anything, she had to suck the sauce off each piece of pasta to try and get him to just eat some kind of plain meal that's not the Teddy Grahams and juice that's available.
For our viewers who might be unfamiliar, what are the minimum legal standards required when the government detains children and families?
So under the Flores Settlement Agreement, there are some basic requirements for detaining children, and those are based on the settlement when it was created in the 90s. And so children have a right to safe and sanitary conditions, and they have a right to be treated with a particular attention to their unique vulnerabilities as minors. That's the Flores Settlement Agreement. There are, of course, other requirements and constitutional requirements in terms of detaining anybody, including children. But Flores sets a very basic floor on the conditions.
And how do the current conditions compare with previous administrations? Is this a long-standing problem, or is this specific to the Trump administration?
Family detention was not being used for many years before it began again in April. And so in previous iterations, there were very similar conditions issues. And one of the biggest problems is that in 1997, the standards were what the consensus was around child welfare at that time. And now we understand and know so much more. And we know that the detention of children of any kind is really harmful. And so what we see is that as kids are in these prolonged, restrictive settings, they really begin to deteriorate. They have regressions in behavior. One mother explained that her previously happy toddler was starting to hit her and hit himself in the face because he was so distraught over the conditions in which they were living. We've just seen otherwise really well-adjusted kids really devolve into concerning just constant sadness, nightmares, crying every night. One teenage boy described to me, a big kid, he was maybe 16 or 17, that he cries every night when he goes to sleep in the detention center where he's held with his father. I would say one other deeply, deeply concerning thing that we've seen in this iteration is really concerning medical conditions. So children are not getting the care the medical care they need. A lot of people are coming in with dangerous chronic medical issues that are not treated or are incorrectly treated. For example, one regular childhood illnesses become very dangerous in detention. So one child had an earache that turned into such a severe infection that she experienced hearing loss, and she really wasn't treated for a long period of time. And then when she finally was treated, the antibiotics they gave her were extremely strong and caused her a lot of distress. And so we see a lot of problems with just basic health, basic access to basic needs.
And on average, how long are these children and these families held in these conditions?
We've seen families being held for longer and longer periods of time. And so, most recently, according to the data that we get, we've seen several, I would say dozens of families and children that were held for more than 80 days. And so these kids are spending months in detention in these horrible conditions.
Well, the Department of Homeland Security did not respond to the NewsHour's multiple requests for a response to the allegations about the conditions at Dilley, but in court documents filed last month, the administration wrote, quote, ICE's actions exemplify a model of regulatory compliance and humane care. How do you respond to that claim?
It's just not true. They are not complying with the Flores Settlement Agreement. They're holding children for extensive periods of time. The conditions are not meeting those basic requirements, as mentioned, not just because of the food. The water is problematic. Often the water containers have mold or algae in them around the facility. The lights are on all night. Children can't sleep. There are constant interruptions. They don't have access to school, which they admitted in their most recent filing. And in fact, there's so little to do there that it makes it all the more difficult for children to even cope with the situation in which they're being held.
To what degree is this by design to get migrants to self-deport?
I think it's very evident that none of this is necessary to carry out the immigration laws and policies, regardless of what they are. Many of these families were arrested while complying with various different forms of immigration requirements. And I think that makes it very clear that the goal is cruelty, and the goal is to make people who came to the United States often seeking safety and security to flee the United States for the countries where they felt so endangered that they had to leave. And I think we're seeing that many families really cannot tolerate the level of harm that is being imposed on them by the government and are in fact leaving.
Becky Wallison with the National Center for Youth Law. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let me say something that gets to the very crux of the matter, and this may be offensive for some to hear who are not on the side that we're on. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years. Say that again. Let me say it one more time for those of you who didn't hear me. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
We'll be talking about this. This is the year 2026, right? But here we are. Julian Blevins, a record-holding track athlete and Special Olympics volunteer, says he's facing racism at Chesterton High School, where he is one of very few black students. Recently, he expressed his frustration online, and the post quickly went viral.
Hey, pretty good, and you?
It's a common response when someone asks, "How are you?" But for Julian Blevins,
I'm tired. I'm so tired.
the 16-year-old Chesterton High School sophomore says the weight has become overwhelming.
I'm ready to give up on this entire thing. Give up on something I love, so track.
Push you! Keep pushing!
Pushing is something the track star knows how to do. It's what the sophomore has been forced to do again and again.
Maybe if I go to a Gary school, more my diverse school, or people of my color, then I wouldn't have to deal with this as much.
But this challenge has become too much to bear. Just days before winter break, Julian received a handwritten letter written by another student at his school.
It went something along the lines of, black people don't deserve anything, any present. They're always jumping and stealing gifts, and talking about how I'm broke.
The letter was the last straw for Julian and his mother, Natalie Cole. It read, in part, "You're a broke expletive, chicken-eating, Kool-Aid drinking boy." Instead of a Christmas card before break, This is what he got, and it didn't stop there.
They know where I live, and put my address down there and my Snapchat username.
Cole said this wasn't the first time she warned the school about racism in a predominantly white environment. This is a letter that she had sent in the past. After this current incident, when she felt she wasn't getting real answers, she took her complaint even higher.
So who did you go to?
I went to the Office of Civil Rights. You can go on the website, and then you filed it with the Education Department.
Somebody wrote me a racist letter in your class, whether you knew about it or not.
Julian says after he made a post about the letter that went viral and spoke about it with classmates, his teacher overheard the conversation and took him to the office. According to his suspension notice, Julian was labeled disrespectful. He was suspended for 4 days. The school's principal, Brent Martinson, released a statement. The statement reads in part, CHS administrators began an investigation that included interviews with several students and staff members. Recorded video footage was reviewed and physical evidence was analyzed. CHS school resource officers were consulted throughout for support. As a result of the investigation, appropriate disciplinary consequences were assigned. Any future allegations will be investigated and addressed in alignment with school rules. But Julian says even after the letter, after the suspension, the racism hasn't stopped.
We had a little bathroom break, and there was a freshman in there. The freshman referred to me as an N-word. He was like, "What's up, my N-word?" And that shocked me.
I want them to bring in, I don't know if it'll be a cultural awareness person.
There's no reason I should be having to come to school every day and deal with some type of racism.
Well, Chesterton, Indiana, part of the Dunlin School Corporation, is largely white, with 88.9% of residents identifying as white and just 1.5% as black. According to 2024 U.S. Census data, the family hopes their concerns will finally be heard, and they're scheduled to meet with the school district this week. Of course, this is a story, Terrence and Sylvia, that we will continue to follow. Back to you.
All right, Tia. I don't want us to lose sight that things are getting better. Each successive generation seems to be making progress in changing attitudes when it comes to race. Doesn't mean we're in a post-racial society. It doesn't mean that racism is eliminated. But, you know, when I talk to Malia and Sasha, and I listen to their friends and I see them interact, they're better than we are. They're better than we were on these issues. And that's true in every community that I've visited all across the country.
To two teens, 15-year-olds, for allegedly vandalizing a park with swastikas in Brooklyn. The hateful image discovered yesterday scrawled all over Gravesend Park. And now the head of the city council leading a push for new city laws to combat anti-Semitism. Eyewitness News reporter Lauren Glassberg live in Borough Park, Brooklyn with more. Lauren.
And David, the swastikas were scrawled during 2 evenings, 16 on Monday night and then 57 on Tuesday night. And now 2 15-year-olds are being charged. That is certainly a relief to the community, but it really speaks to a much larger problem. This afternoon, New York City Council Speaker Julie Menin toured Gravesend Park in Borough Park, along with community members and NYPD, noting all the areas where swastikas were painted this week.
It is disgusting, it is deplorable, it is unconscionable, and we're not going to sit by and let this continue to happen.
The offensive images were wiped away and painted over yesterday, and kids were out today on the equipment, but the hurt lingers.
Words are not enough. Condemning is not enough. There has to be change. Immediate change.
Deborah Halberstam's son was killed in an anti-Semitic terrorist attack in New York 30 years ago. She and others are frustrated that anti-Semitism is on the rise.
We know that the Jewish population is 10% of city residents right now, yet 57% of all hate crimes are anti-Semitic. And so at this point, we have to stand up and do something.
On Friday, Speaker Menin announced a 5-point plan to combat anti-Semitism with a dedicated hotline, improved security, and more education. Something this high school student agrees with.
I think they do a good job teaching about the Holocaust, but they don't talk about anti-Semitism as much because they don't talk about current living situations.
Certainly an interesting point coming from a 14-year-old. Now, as for those two 15-year-olds who were arrested, one is charged with aggravated harassment and criminal mischief as a hate crime. The other is charged with aggravated harassment. Now, take a look at the NYPD camera that is just outside of the park. That, according to the police, was helpful in cracking this case. And local members here say they would like to see some cameras inside the park as well. Neighborhood watch groups will be patrolling out in force to ensure that no further anti-Semitism happens here. Live in Borough Park, Lauren Glassberg, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Lauren.
White supremacy is a sickness.
But we begin with an investigation on the part of Gwinnett County Police of an alleged incident at a local Social Security office where people were in there minding their own business, doing what they needed to do, when allegedly, according to police, a man, kind of an elderly man, went in there and then unloaded on people with a verbally offensive rant. Let's get out to Ray Urena, who is covering this story for us this afternoon. Ray, what happened here?
Well, Tom, as you can imagine, this is a video that was liked and shared tens of thousands of times all across any social media platform that you can name it, Instagram, TikTok. If you saw it on social media, you definitely saw this video in the last couple of days. But here's what Gwinnett police tell us what happened. They say that their officers were called to the Social Security Administration building that's over on Shackleford Road Wednesday morning. Now, Fox 5 has obtained a copy of that video through an open records request, and we have muted portions of it where multiple expletives and racial slurs were yelled at a security guard, people, as well as children. And in that video, police say 65-year-old Robert John Burke also says, "What are you going to do? It's free speech," before walking away from the building. According to the police report, the security guard says Robert Burke often shows up to the building and is a known troublemaker who had been previously banned from that location. However, when officers arrived, Burke was nowhere to be found, but using videos and witness statements, police were able to get a warrant for disorderly conduct. A day later, officers responded to a disturbance at a hotel near Duluth where they found Burke and arrested him.
The video actually went viral. We were dispatched to the scene, so we already had knowledge of it. We just want to encourage people to continue to do so. Take video. We love that. It always helps us. But still contact the police so we can take steps to make an arrest quickly in situations like this.
And we did reach out to the Gwinnett County Sheriff's Office. They tell us that Burke is still behind bars and locked up at the Gwinnett County Detention Center. We have also sent out several emails that have been listed for Robert Burke, but we have yet to hear back, Tom.
Ray, a couple of questions for you. Do we know why this man, number one, and you might have mentioned it, was so upset? And number two, are you telling me that he keeps showing up at this Social Security office? And if so, for what reason?
Yes. We don't know that reason yet, Tom, but we just do know that the security guard who was in that video was also interviewed by police in that police report, and that security guard says that, like I said earlier, this guy is a normal troublemaker. He often shows up to the office, and he was previously banned. We don't know yet what caused this incident to happen for him to be yelling and screaming at people at the Social Security office at about 9 o'clock Wednesday morning. That's the time according to what it says on the police report. So there's still a lot of unknowns surrounding this incident, Tom.
He is right. I mean, there is such thing as free speech, but you cannot go in to a government office building and harass people for absolutely no reason at all. It's like verbal assault. I don't know the laws here where this is concerned, but what are police planning to charge this guy with?
Well, Tom, I actually asked police about that, about the limitations that the First Amendment can do, and they say that these racial slurs that he shouted constitute to fighting words, which are not protected under their First Amendment rights. And because of that, police took the liberty of charging him with a misdemeanor disorderly conduct on that, and he is still, like I said, behind bars at the Gwinnett County Detention Center, Tom.
All right, Ray Urena with some troubling information there at Gwinnett County this afternoon. Ray, thanks so much.
LA. LA, big city of dreams, but everything in LA ain't always what it seems. You might get fooled if you come from out of town.
The number of hate crimes is on the rise in Orange County. The Orange County Human Relations Commission released its annual hate crimes report. It shows crimes targeting certain groups of people may have spiked to the highest level in more than a decade. But exactly how Orange County got those numbers is the subject of debate. Joining us now is our OC Oracle and LA Times columnist Gustavo Arellano. Hey, Gustavo.
Hola, Steve.
So before we dive into these numbers, how exactly did the county determine these hate crimes, the numbers of hate crimes, and why is the latest report different from the ones before it?
They say that, at least according to the county, that they're only going by police departments, law enforcement agencies, in other words, who they have their own determination of what a hate crime is. And in the past, it would have been done by people who say like, oh, or, you know, municipalities saying this was a hate crime or all that. And so, of course, the issue is sometimes people, you know, it's in the eyes of the victim, the person who went with it. And so sometimes law enforcement agencies will say that wasn't a hate crime where an actual crime happened. That was a hate incident, which a hate incident's, you know, language, flyers being put out, but, you know, tell that to the people who are the subject of that hate, you know?
So this report then from the Human Relations Commission, this is crimes, just crimes, not incidents.
Yeah, so just crimes. They said that at least last year in 2024, it was 119 hate crimes. That is an increase, a big increase. But also, you know, they're doing a little bit more research, and some of those those hate crimes might be knocked down to a hate incident. So it's kind of confusing, and that's what is upsetting people, especially civil rights groups and folks who have been fighting against the rise of hate in Orange County for decades.
I know that they're talking about retroactively looking at some of these crimes/incidents as well, right?
Yeah, and the grand jury, the Orange County grand jury last year, they had a report about that saying like, hey, the way Orange County is doing its hate crimes and hate incidents, we need to focus more on the underreportedness of this, because if you just rely again on law enforcement, and there's nothing against law enforcement, of course, they go out and their job is to crack down on crimes and report the crimes. But when it comes to something as what seems to be legally nebulous as hate, then I think what the grand jury was saying and advocates, it's better to side on the it's better to err on the side of let's document more hate crimes and incidents than less.
Than less. Is there anything that in this latest report stood out to you as far as numbers go?
I mean, sadly, it's the same as it always is in Orange County. Orange County has a very, very small black community, about 2.1% according to the 2020 census, a number that has not increased in 30 years, and yet black folks remain the people who get the most hate crimes against them. Anti-Jewish violence, of course, is big. White individuals are seen the numbers of perpetrators, white people are number one, but number two is Latinos. That just goes with what the county's demographics are. But especially on, anti-black incidents, I mean, it's a tragedy and it's sad, but it's also just a very Orange County thing.
This report is out now. How does the county use the information going forward? Do they ramp up law enforcement efforts? What is it that they do with this information?
Well, the historical way in Orange County was to fund the Orange County Human Relations Commission, and in recent years, its auxiliary arm, Groundswell. They're the people who, the Human Relations Commission, they're the ones who are documenting all these hate crimes. Groundswell, which used to be also that same name, their job was to go into schools, into community groups, and serve as not a buffer, but really teach people that hate is wrong. But that's always been an issue with funding, and especially in this climate of where federal government funding is targeting anything that reeks of DEI. I just see the county not pushing for that sort of funding as much as they used to.
LA Times columnist Gustavo Arellano. Gustavo, as always, thank you.
Gracias.
Yo, man, let's get out of here. Word to your mother.
Today, a Minnesota man is fighting a legal battle against ICE after he says federal agents unlawfully detained him twice. 38-year-old Garrison Gibson says armed agents broke down the front door of his house while his wife, 10-year-old daughter, and 11-year-old niece were inside. Officials sent Gibson to a facility in Texas and threatened to deport him to Liberia, a country he fled when he was a child. A judge then released him, but the next day he was detained again by ICE. Garrison Gibson joins me now, along with Mark Prokish, an attorney representing him. Garrison, what have these past 10 days been like for you and your family?
We're just trying to settle back in, basically, and get on with our life.
Talk to me a little bit about that moment when everything unfolded. And again, it's you, your wife, but also 2 kids are in the house.
Yeah, it was very troublesome, because we was all asleep when they first came to the house, and then they was banging on the door. And I knew I had already checked in, so I didn't know why they was here. And they woke my kids.
Oh, they woke your children?
Yes.
And what did they say?
When they first came to the door, it was around 9 o'clock. They banged on the door for at least a good 20 seconds before even saying anything. When I came to the door, I was like, "Who is it?" They just said, "Come outside, we want to talk to you." I was like, "Who is it?" And then they said, "It's ICE, you got to come outside." I was like, "You got a warrant?" They said, "No, we don't have a warrant." I was like, "Okay, go get a warrant and come back." And that's when you see all the officers that's out there. Two cars stayed in the front and 2 cars stayed in the alley. And then the other 2 cars, they left and came back probably an hour and a half later. And that's when they kicked the door in.
So they take you away, and then what?
They took me to the Whipple building, the head office, the Whipple building, booked me, put me in a cold holding cell, and then a few hours later, they put me on a plane to Texas.
So they put him on a plane to Texas. This is the first time, Mark. Explain the confusion that led to Garrison then being detained a second time. What unfolded after he went to Texas?
Thank you, Chris. So yes, we then had filed the habeas corpus early Monday morning, and the federal judge ordered quickly right after that to just hold Garrison in Minnesota while the judge looked through the habeas. And then hours after that was when they sent Garrison down to Texas in violation of that temporary order. The government then quickly realized their mistake, brought him back on Tuesday, and then the judge ordered his release Thursday. Thursday night, I went to pick up Garrison after hours, and because it was after hours, they said, just come on back in tomorrow morning to finish up the paperwork. And with that order from the judge, we thought this will be fine. So we went down back again to the Whipple building on Friday morning, and that's when they re-detained him again.
So the Department of Homeland Security spokesperson, Tricia McLaughlin, says that Garrison's arrest was lawful, calling him a criminal illegal alien, adding that, quote, his lengthy rap sheet includes robbery, drug possession with intent to sell, possession of a deadly weapon, malicious destruction, and theft. He has had a final order of removal from an immigration judge since 2023. That's the statement from DHS. Where does this legal battle go from here?
Well, just in brief response to that, working backwards, Ms. McLaughlin clearly doesn't have all of the facts because, first of all, the order was 2009, not 2023. And second of all, a lot of those alleged arrests have been vacated or dismissed. His only actual criminal conviction is for writing on a wall with a Sharpie when he was about 19 years old. But our plan is to now go and try to vacate that 2009 deportation order because we believe that there's been changes of the laws that makes that deportation order not valid anymore.
Garrison, can you talk about what it's been like, first of all, to come home after this experience, to see your name in the headlines, and government officials talking about you in ways that we just heard from your lawyer are provably untrue?
it's kind of like upsetting because I'm not the same person I was when I was a younger kid. I've matured more. I became a family man, and people that know me know that I'm a good person.
And you say you're a family man, so if I may, how are your wife and your little girl doing?
Like, to be honest, the past few days, like when I was arrested and detained, my wife couldn't sleep. These past few days has been the only time she's really got like a decent amount of sleep. And my daughter, she just came back because she's been at my older cousin's house because she didn't want to be here for a while because it was still traumatizing to her.
In the videos of ICE outside your door, we can actually see and hear your neighbors screaming at the agents. Can you tell us about the kind of support you've gotten from your community?
Man, I love we all each other every time we see each other. It's like hatred towards one another. It's like a neighborhood supposed to be.
Let me ask you finally, Mark, when you hear the things that DHS has said about your client, do you think that this is indicative of something larger that you've seen in these cases?
Thank you for the question. Yes, and actually here in Minnesota, we've had a couple of ACLU lawsuits about this type of behavior, and the state of Minnesota and the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul have filed a similar lawsuit. And so, yes, this is very indicative of this surge of ICE officers in Minnesota. And it's not Minnesotan. This is not who we are. I love my Minnesota community, and I love, as Garrison said, how our neighbors have really supported each other in our tough times right now.
Mark Prokish, Garrison Gibson, especially Garrison, I know it's not easy to come on TV and talk about these things, but I think the stories are really informative for a lot of people. So thank you for coming on the program. It's much appreciated.
The Cows, Gusty Renegade, Worthless Negro from Virginia, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, January 24, 2026. So I have been told. This is our weekly compensatory call-in. Dial in if you have thoughts, observations, questions. The number 720-716-7300. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Not for spectators. Speaking of spectators, oh man, I will tell you what, we are about to cut a fool up here in the Pacific Northwest tomorrow. Brain damage or no, we will root on the beloved Seattle Seahawks and see if they can get back to the Super Bowl again. I know one thing, if they do mess around and win tomorrow, back in the Super Bowl for Negro History Month, I'm going to get the program when they won the Super Bowl last. Not the last time they played in it. The last time they won the Super Bowl. The Cows we existed at that time. We broadcasted during that game when they won the Super Bowl. Oh man. Some of the participants during that broadcast, they were so excited. I don't know if they had like DraftKings and all that stuff, the prop bets back then, but man, they were rooting like I had put my whole check, on the Seahawks, and they gonna come through and get it done. Woo! They cheered like they were right up here in the 206 with gut, like they were cheering more than I was. I was telling them that, hey man, Washington has a lot of gun-loving white people. Washington State, talking about like they do the shooting and bang bang and all that stuff. Like, oh man, that ain't nothing that you root for, especially if it's dark and you still hearing the bang bang and all that. Man, that ain't. You hope they don't get on no run and make a whole lot of Super Bowls, because oh man, man, that is not fun. Gunshots in the night from white people. Anyway, but I'm gonna go back and find that. If they win, we'll have to see. If they are back in the Super Bowl for Negro History Month, we will go back and get that archive. Maybe even get when they lost the Super Bowl. As I said, Gus T was not watching the big screen, cursing Tom Brady in 2015. No. We were talking with Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. Might even have to go back and revisit that as well. Any hoodles. Brain damage tomorrow. We'll see. That's it. We were supposed to have a program this past Wednesday or Tuesday, and we had to reschedule. Got all discombobulated. Usual suspects. We will try again this week. We will see for Wednesday. Double check social media, all that good stuff. I'll post to make sure things are going down for Wednesday. But man, had me all which away this past week. But plotting forward. Check social media, will update, but tentative Wednesday, confirming with the white author as we proceed. From, I guess, two quick things. Number one, reading about racism is more important than watching television, specifically reading nonfiction about racism. More important than watching television. We have been reading Shar Adams' Black-Owned, The Revolutionary Life of the Black Bookstore, just published barely 2 months ago, the very end of 2025, and it has so much great information, so many deliberate efforts, at least 200 years worth of deliberate racist efforts to make sure black people do not read books about racism. And it gets refined in all these different ways, but fascinating book. Even, in fact, yesterday, one of the points that was raised, she said the privileged black dudes like Gus T tend to read history books, nonfiction. I do even say at the Catherine Massey Book Club, hey, the biography kings. She continued, the black females tend to read romance novels, nonfiction, waiting to exhale type thing. Man, and when she gave the list of like the heyday of this period, which Waiting to Exhale was a part of that, it was a lot of books that was talking about No Count Leroy, not Whitey, No Count Leroy. It was rather enlightening, but in which, although I can only say that had come up many times, not in terms of the gender disparity, but just in terms of what is acceptable, because Waiting to Exhale became a big seller in terms of a book and a film. But that has come up in this book. It's all right if black people want to read goofy things. They talked about what I'm calling goofy things. Books that are not about racism. That's goofy if we're in a system of white supremacy. But it's okay to read goofy things that are not about the system of white supremacy, racism, fiction, romance novels, whatever, metaphysics. They would talk about that yesterday. You can go get all the astrology books you want. Serious things about racism. Uh-oh, you're a criminal. You're a radical. You're a militant. We might put you in jail. We might kill you, arrest you. At least we're going to come and be nosy. What you got that there book for? What you reading it all for? You're not even supposed to know how to read, which might also mean, a crime depending on what time period it is. But fascinating for many reasons. She talks a lot about children's books too. You should definitely get the book if you are not tuning in with us for the book club, the archives. We've only done 3 sections, but it has been fascinating. During our 3rd section just yesterday evening, Friday, one of our participants, he called in. He said that the basic time period that we're now in the book is like late 1960s through the 1980s. That's where we kind of left off at yesterday. So we should be moving into the 90s for this Friday when we get to section 4. But our caller yesterday said, I'm aware of books that were published before the 1970s and such, but it seems like there's a vacuum from like 1970 to 1985. Are you aware of books that are specifically about racism that were published during that like 15-year time period? And I guess I'll pause. One, this is not any sort of, criticism of non-white people. This is just an observation. Really, I'm reiterating things that I've said for many years. That's it. But the caller said this yesterday, and my immediate response was, wow, for years now, I've been saying victims of racism. All of us, Gusty, all of us, we should all get one nonfiction book every calendar year that was published that current year and read it cover to cover. That's every year. We should get something brand new. That way we can have, if it's a specific research topic, if it's racism specifically, get something new. You can see what some of the new research is, and specifically where the racism, I said, we, victims of racism, we are not aware of how much literature, how many books are published really on a daily, weekly basis that are specifically about racism. We are just not aware. Disagreeing with Miss Shar Adams, we black people do not have a culture of reading, and certainly we do not have a culture of reading about racism. Not at all. Anyway, but I've been saying we should do that because that way we would be at least a little bit more aware of how many, just literally tons of books, probably way down the whole ship, are published directly dealing with racism. And so this happened before. We had a listener, writer, wrote in, was saying they were looking for books or subject matter about Jamaica and the maroon population. These are black people who resisted slavery, white invaders. And I just went to the university library catalog, did a search. I used the exact terms that they gave, Jamaica, maroons, and I literally got about 10,000 hits. All kinds of books, materials. They had a lot of that material on site. Certainly could get you off to a good start. And I said, man, we do not do serious research on racism. This is not all of us, but this is large numbers of black people. If you are talking about that Seahawks game tomorrow, oh yes, particularly privileged black males, we will research and prop bet and know all the data about that game. Once we get to serious information on white supremacy racism, numbers dwindle dramatically. So this, as I said, this was previously, person wrote in, said that, and they said people don't write about or publish about the Maroons in Jamaica. False, as I said, 10,000 hits. The Person Yesterday, books 1970 to 1985, 15-year period. I knew immediately that cannot be, particularly during that time period, just the things that took place. You have public revelation of COINTELPRO, public revelation of the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, Jonestown. It is Assata Shakur escapes, all the beginnings of the so-called Atlanta child murders, all of these major events that have spawned many, many books just themselves individually. All of these things were happening, and global system of white supremacy, racism. I knew there had to be just a massive number of books published during this time period. I did the same thing, university catalog search, but this is restricted search. So I searched just racism, and let's see what books were published during this time period, 1970 to 1985. I speculated there would be hundreds, could even be thousands. It was right at 1,000. And I mean like 997 books for this time period. And I mean, wow. Some of it, as I was kind of looking at the catalog, some of it was, oh yeah, I recognize. I mentioned some of the titles yesterday on the live broadcast, The Bluest Eye, some of the books that I absolutely adore. But I mean, during this time period, 1970 to 1985, white law, racism in the police, courts, and prisons, blacks and American medical care, Bad Blood, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. That one stood out to me because the author James Jones, guest on the Cows 2012, white man, of course. Black Resistance, White Law, A History of Constitutional Racism, Hooded Empire, the Ku Klux Klan in Colorado. Should have read that right when we were reading about Columbine, yes. Chancellor L. Williams' Destruction of Black Civilization. Even if people have not read that one, I think they know of that book, yes. Dr. Huey P. Newton's Revolutionary Suicide. That would be another one. I suspect if people have not read that book, they know of or have heard of that book, or at least heard of the author. The late Bell Hooks began publishing some of her work, black feminism, as they say, during this exact time period. And the one and only Neely Fuller Jr., the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, was originally published 1984. How Orwellian. But I mean, that's just a very abbreviated list. Even again, I can get James Baldwin, he would be on there many times for this time period, but the book I would single out is Evidence of Things Not Seen, because I did say the so-called Atlanta child murders. James Baldwin wrote a whole book about the system of racism and the so-called Atlanta child murders. Evidence of Things Not Seen. That is a good one. I did read that one. Anyway, like I said, there are many other books, important books that you have heard, probably some that you've heard of, like Destruction of Black Civilization, and some that you've not heard of that sound like they might be important. Hooded Empire. Some that Bad Blood, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, that'd be a good one to check out as well. But there are so many. But one, white people constantly write, research, study what, contrary to black culture, I would say it is white culture to read about racism. It is white culture to read about racism. It is not black culture. We are about passive forms of entertainments and insulting other black people. We are not about reading, researching, studying studying books, literature on racism, white supremacy. That is not black. I don't think that's black culture anywhere in the world. If you know of any black people where that a large number of the people classified as black in this geographic location, that's what they do in their free time. They don't care about no Seahawks tomorrow. They don't care about no Super Bowl next month. They don't care about no NBA, nothing at no time. They are studying racism seriously. Books, any time period this year. That's what they do. That's what they're always doing. Even on Christmas Day, that's what they're doing. Let me know, because we should all move there. But I do not know of that location, and I don't know of black people who behave like that. Not in no large number. Anyway, but that's just a start. Like I said, I found easy 1,000 books directly about racism, white supremacy for that time period, and it would probably be more. Again, the book we're reading right now, black owned, it was just published. Reading non-fiction books about racism is more important than watching television. Even the NFL playoffs, even the NFL playoffs. Go Seahawks. The other comment I will get in. Wow. I do not know what folks use Chat GPT or any of the chatbots, period. Doesn't have to be that one. Whatever. Any of the chatbots. Well, I guess retract. I'll say maybe something about that really quick, but I will say you can talk to the chatbots about white supremacy, racism, and use counter-racist logic. They do understand. Now, I will say not all of them equally. I did speak to one of the chatbots. I attempted to bring up white supremacy, and it shut down immediately. That is not the case with all of the chatbots. I did use one. Wow. I was absolutely stunned. Pleasantly surprised. I can honestly say the chatbot brought up Neely Fuller Jr. and had lots of constructive tidbits to add for Shar Adams' book. Now, the illustration that was most shocking, I began to discuss Breaking Bad, the television series, with the chatbot. Wow. If I had had the chatbot when I originally started Breaking Bad, we would have probably done like a week's worth of shows. I would have just talked about the things I discussed with the chatbot. I would have made it give me like a chart and all of that to just organize. Wow. I have interviewed white people about white supremacy and Breaking Bad. The same way that Fuller says, he pinpoints like The Godfather, Shawshank Redemption, is saying, oh my gosh, these films are all about white supremacy, racism. You can watch them and learn all about the system. I would not say that. I'd repeat what I just said. Reading non-fiction books about racism is more important than watching television. Even Breaking Bad. That said, if there's going to be television watched, and you do have to have like one TV show explain white supremacy, racism, that is it, which is what I said when I first saw it. Like, again, it's the white family. I said this with the chatbot over and the chatbot deconstructed this beautifully. Way better, like hands down. The conversation I had with the chatbot about white supremacy, exponentially better than any conversation I've had with any victim of racism about Breaking Bad. Not even close. And I've attempted this with non-white people who've read Mr. Fuller Dr. Welsing premiered, they had barely paid attention to the fact that, oh, wait a minute, it's the white family? Oh, that might be important. Yes, that might be important. What was so profound about discussing all this with the chatbot? I could talk for days. There would have been so many programs just highlighting, and one I can speed to quickly, and I even had to stall, like, what changed some of these things I did not pick out before, and blah, 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 and just a lot of time studying racism. Breaking Bad went off the air 10 years ago, even a little more than that, so it's been a long time. Hopefully I've learned a lot since then, but one of the main things, the most important things that shifted, and I was able to learn so much from this show, and you doubled down on what I said 10 years ago. If you got to watch one show, it can only be one show, study white supremacy, racism, and try and learn as much as you can, Breaking Bad would be it. No contest. No, it's not even anything else to think about. Not The Godfather. Not those are okay. Breaking Bad. Now, the really whole nother level of, oh my God, this is everything I would say, all areas of people activity, like, woo. I remembered I was not saying white people do not care about children at the time Breaking Bad went off the air. I was, white people do not care about children. Adding over a decade, now it's white people do not care about children. Watching Breaking Bad and saying that now, I'm so ashamed that I was not saying that then. I said that to the chatbot that, wow, one of the main themes of Breaking Bad is white people do not care about children. It resisted at first. I backed the chatbot down, and then it began to refine and sharpen the point that I made. Now, how did I back the chat? I can't go into the whole TV program because come on. But the quick of the back down, it's in the structure of the show that white people don't care about children. The main character, Mr. White, and that's in the structure of the show. The bot pointed that out. Most of the characters call the main character Mr. White. Well, after he's left the classroom, he is still, hey, Mr. White. But be that as it may, Mr. White and none of the other white characters, they don't care about children. Mr. White abandons, he has a choice. You can go be with the birth of your white daughter, or you can go sell drugs to a Negro. What does he choose? It's not even a moment to think, I'm going to go sell drugs to these Negro. I'll get to that child later. Now, this same daughter, at the end of the show, he kidnaps her for leverage so I don't go to the hoosgow, abandons her at the fire station. Figures, it's not worth it. If I'm going to be out on the lam, it'll be easier not having a newborn, so he ditches her. The child is still breastfeeding. He kidnapped her. His own daughter kidnapped her. That's not what I used to back him down, even though that was a part of it. I was getting them on the ropes things. I was like, wait a minute, what you mean white people care about children? That's crazy. But what you mean? Wait a minute. I said, in the middle of this series that is beloved by white people, in the middle of this series, didn't the secondary white character, Jesse Pinkman, all these characters having color names, oh my, woo! Didn't Mr. Pinkman, when he went to the rehab facility where it was a white, blonde-haired leader, and Mr. Pinkman says, well, what qualifies you to sit here and tell us that's and so what we should do. Being an addict is okay. What qualifies you, white man? And the white man tells Mr. Pink Man, he says, well, I did kill my daughter. After a pregnant pause, he says, you know, I'm an addict too, alcoholic. Having my birthday party, I told my wife, honey, ABC store, liquor store, they're about to close. Go get me a bottle. We almost out. Just, I don't feel like, I said, oh my God, we're going to run out. He said, I look at my watch. Liquor store's going to close in 15 minutes. I grab my keys. I run. I get in the car. I peel out of the driveway and I ran over my 6-year-old. I told that to the bot. It didn't do much more resisting after that. Ooh, you precise, Brother Gus. And that's what I mean. Then it began to sharpen what I said. White people do not care about children. You can watch Breaking Bad. They're going to make it over and over and over. They're going to make that. They're going to make it easy. Make that point. Structurally make that point. And the bot said, man, the white leader, he doesn't have a name, I had to give you his name, but the white leader at the rehab, it becomes a part of his qualifications to have this job. Hey, because Jesse, Mr. Pinkman asked him, how are you qualified to be here? I'm qualified because I killed my child. Oh, okay. And I said, not the bot, I said, hey, isn't that vehicular manslaughter? You hop in a car, you had a little bit too much Mad Dog 2020, and you run over your child or somebody else's 6-year-old. Don't they lock you up for that? Don't you get at least a week? 2 weeks in jail? Nah. You get a cushy job. And that's a part of how I'm qualified to have this job. Bot didn't do no more resisting after that one. From that point forward, we just started picking out how this pattern of white people not caring about children is reinforced. Or it's in the structure of the series. And then it's reinforced almost every episode. And I think the coup de grace was, I said, wait a minute, don't the white family, don't they kick their white children out of the house for a substantial chunk of the series? Whoa. We too dangerous. We out making bombs and fighting with niggers and dark people all over the world and making drugs and killing folks and dissolving bodies in acids and robbing trains and God knows what else. We ain't got time to take care of no children. Get out of here. Nobody said, you right, Brother Gus. You right, Brother Gus. And the bot even said, they don't really kick these children out for their safety. They kick these white children out because they are a distraction. That's what the bot said. I said, oh. And it just went from there. Everything else, you right. White people do not care about children. Spectacular. In fact, what was the other one that I missed? They say the man in Breaking Bad. I said, I was even stunned because I said that to the bot, and I said, now is the bot going to pick up on the significance of the phrase, the man? Absolutely. It went into the racial dynamics, the history. When did this phrase start being used? Absolutely. They would know about this. Oh my God. What's the context? And even I picked it up. They say the man repeatedly in Breaking Bad, and I had missed all of that from before. The most critical giants. In fact, it's said with increasing importance. From the first time it said to when the last time it said in the series, the last time it said to Mr. White, he has killed a Negra. The chicken man, no Gus, he's killed the chicken man. A different white character says to him, we had a good thing going. We had a great system. You could make a lot of money, but no. You had to be the man. And then the man, Mr. White, kills him too. Got upset about that, but the bot picked up on that, and even the racial significance, because he said, Mr. White, he had to be the man because he could not stand working for no Negra. He wanted to be the man. In fact, they doubled down on that in the series. I can't even believe I missed that. They doubled down on that in the series, where a white man kills a non-white person, and some other white person comes and say either you are the man or you had to be the man. How you be the man? You kill dark people. At least in the world of Breaking Bad, to be the man, you kill the dark people. I could talk for woo. Anyway, I will say again, if you get stuck someplace and the victims, they name call you and talk bad about you, and they don't want to deconstruct you, and they tease at you because you don't want to read novels, and I don't want to read Hate You Give, I don't think that's a new American classic. Let's get out of here, cool. You don't read it. Hey, get you a chat bot. Because you can talk about black owned. I did that too. That find all kinds of information. Oh, incredible supplement, can really be an aid to refining and helping your understanding of white supremacy. The bot brought up Neely Fuller Jr. voluntarily. Counter-racism code and everything. The bot brought up Mr. Fuller. Not perfect, but wow. I can only say again, if I'd had that when I originally watched Breaking Bad, I would have picked out a lot more material. Even the homoeroticism of Breaking Bad, I would have. Anyway, let's see. TV, reading more, and even the bot pointed out counter-racist literature about white supremacy and Breaking Bad, so that I could get back to reading nonfiction about racism. Let's see. The reports that we heard at the beginning about in Benin, they're going to do the tourist slave ship. I would love to know, like, who is signing up to go and do that. Like, I know they have, like, other museums to talk about slavery, and they got the plantation museums and plantation bed and breakfasts and all of that sort of thing, but, like, who is signing up? Like, oh yeah, I want to go hop on the slave ship replica. Like, I'm good on that, especially if we're going to try and make this realistic. Is it going to smell like the slave ship? Like, I'm good. Like, I'm good. You can, no, I don't want no souvenirs. I'm good on all of that. But I would be interested, like, who is going? Is this like another form of delectable Negro type of a thing? Let's see. In Zimbabwe, where they were talking about the white farmers there appealing to Donald Trump, my sick white brother, Mike Swango, that's who immediately, I didn't even think of Robert Mugabe first. I thought Mike Swango. We did even had a white guest on the program from Zimbabwe too, but all of that's in connection to Michael Swango. So that's the first thing I think of. Anyway, anti-white bias. Remember that? They said Swango in Zimbabwe, he went to kill black people. They can't even count. They can't even count how many black people he killed in Zimbabwe. And was not prosecuted for any of those deaths. And to add insult to fatalities, he won his anti-white bias suit in Zimbabwe. Reading nonfiction, more important than watching television. Anyway, in Zimbabwe, the white farmers appealing to President Trump to a bit. Matter of fact, speaking of the chatbot, I asked the chatbot, I said, are the white farmers in Zimbabwe, are they asking President Trump to help them reverse Robert Mugabe's attempted counter-racist agricultural reforms? Question mark. I thought that was well worded, like, and let's see what it says. And I told you, I said it can process counter-racist logic. So it answered, and it sounded like it was saying yes, but it didn't answer my question. It just wanted to say, Robert Mugabe did this. This was to overturn colonial invasions where they came in, all these white farmers took all the best land and kicked all the black people off, and economic disparities, blah, blah, blah. And I said, you didn't answer the question. Please answer the question. So let's try it again. So are the white farmers in Zimbabwe, are they asking President Trump to help them reverse Robert Mugabe's attempted counter-racist agricultural reforms? Yes. Okay, right on. I told you, it can process counter-racist logic, like, pretty well. Breaking Bad? What's happening in Zimbabwe? Let's see. And I thought it was important in Zimbabwe. They said that Mr. Mugabe's, late Mugabe's attempted reforms where they were taking land from these white people, suspected race soldiers, they said that there was some violence. There were 7 white deaths. 7. Are you serious? Like, man, you probably have 7 deaths from a stapler in the year 2026. Like, 7? And I'd even need to know, like, the context. Like, were they acting a fool? Did they pull it on? You're not going to take my land. Come on. Nah, I'm good. They did say, I thought it was important in that segment as well, that these white farmers have had this land since 1890. Their kith and kin have had this land since 18. That sound kind of K-ish. Their kith and kin and clan have had this territory for a long time, well over 100 years. So we are not leaving, or at least we should be well compensated. Beat it. Let's see. And the white people working together, they said several white nations sanctioned Robert Mugabe and have talked awful about him like forever. Some of that was in the book about Mike Swanga. Why would you even want to go to a place like this when Robert Mugabe was still alive, since they hate white people and it's so awful? Remember he went and stayed with a white family. They had Negro slaves and everything, remember? Reading is more important than watching television. Let's see. They said President Trump had zero credibility because of his conduct and previous accusations that he'd made in South Africa, that they were messing over the white farmers, and I guess even his conduct with what he's been saying about Greenland and Venezuela and all the rest of it. Man, President Trump is the man. I think the man got all the credibility in the known universe. You'd have to show me, like, he ain't got, whatever that means, he ain't got no credibility. Okay, tell President Maduro that. Got no credibility, whatever. Matter of fact, tell the folks in Greenland that he ain't got no credibility. Oh, don't worry about no, all that talking about taking credit, whatever. Let's see, when they spoke with Miss Lavinia Jenkins, she's credited with being the first black person to own a home in the Palisades that then burned down with the wildfires in California. And she said that she doesn't think she's going to be able to move back there because it's so expensive to rebuild, and it doesn't seem like a possibility. And I mean, even think of that, at 97. Are you serious? She said, what is our purpose for being here? And she even flipped it around and asked the interviewer, Steve Chiatakis, white man with KCRW in California. And he seemed kind of flummoxed, like, whoa, I asked the questions here, nigga, woman, wait a minute. Purpose, I don't know what he didn't want to say. Practice racism. He didn't want to say that. I don't know what his purpose is. And she said, hey, we all struggle with what is our purpose for being here. Fuller had that on the list. He said, hey, if you are classified as non-white, a victim of white supremacy, what is your purpose for being alive in a system of white supremacy? We should sit and think about that question. If you're not going to read, at least turn the screen off for a little while and think. You should have an answer to that question. What is your purpose for being here? Is it to drink Mad Dog? Is to bet on the Super Bowl? Call black people names. A lot of us apparently have concluded, I don't know if that's my main purpose, but that is a big part of what I'm supposed to be here. I'm going to call Leroy some names. What is your purpose for being in existence in a system of white supremacy racism? Much obliged for Megan. Revisit that question, Miss Jenkins. They talked about the fire at the church named after Dr. King up in Massachusetts, New England. Basically, all of New England is a racially restricted region where they do not allow black people anyway. But when they were talking about this church, act of terrorism in arson, burning this church down and finally getting it back together, and they were talking to some of the congregation, and they were saying that they were trying to address forgiveness. Man, I immediately remember Dr. Welsing. She spoke with us in her last year of physical existence, 2015, and she said, when I talk to my clients, general and child psychiatrists, we do not talk about forgiveness. I do not think that that has a place in the recuperation process for a victim of trauma. If you get to that point, great, but that's not even a part of the process, so-called forgiving. Right on, that's what I thought of when they're forgiving. Like, what? Let's get the church rebuilt and get back to doing something constructive, like forgiving. Like, put them in general population and, let's be done with it. And even Dr. Welsing, she said that is how we have been trained as victims of white terrorism, to forgive race soldiers. That's how we've been trained, given a whole religion and a structure about forgiving race soldiers. The segment about the T.M. Landry School and the new book, I don't know if that's 2026, but that might be one, Miracle Children, where they said that these children down in Louisiana, Cancer Alley, that these educators, and I think some of them were non-white. That's audio, so I have to go and look at the pictures of T.M. Land, because I think I'd seen this before, at least seen some of the children. But they said that these educators were threatening them, and, if you rat on us, you snitch on us, we're going to make it so that your college application gets rescinded, and you won't be able to go to school, and all the rest of it, and that they were lying, telling the children to fill out the application and say that their parents were drug addicts and they were homeless and all this stuff, that were lies, I guess, so that they could sound like poor endangered Negroes, and the colleges would feel bad and maybe give them a scholarship or something of that effect. I'd even have to, is that effective? Does that work? Will they DEI you if you do such a thing? I don't know. At any rate, I would be curious to learn, and even what happened to these students. It just sounds horrible all the way around, and they have a lot of these programs where it could be white people or non-white people, where they end up just being predators, targeting non-white children and making all these promises that they'll get them in school or improve their test scores or whatever it is, and it just ends up being a lie, and they still, maybe at the minimum, They just steal a lot of money from you and don't deliver on the services they promises at like the minimum, if not way worse. But it's a lot of programs like that, particularly I'd say targeting black children, non-white children. The segment, speaking of children being targeted, Minnie Jean Brown Trickney, as soon as I heard that, again, reading is more important than watching television. We did read about the Little Rock Nine well in advance of all of this years ago. In fact, we went back to back. That was one of the first like historical events that we spent a lot of time, like months, studying. We read Warriors Don't Cry, and then we read Elizabeth and Hazel. Elizabeth Eckford was one of the Little Rock Nine, and then Hazel Masery, suspected race soldiers, was one of the white people out yelling. And so the book goes back and forth talking about these two members of this historical event in 1957 Arkansas. And we got to hear a lot of Bill Clinton when we were studying all that as well. But the first thing that came to my mind when they spoke with Miss Minnie Jean Trickney about her experience and what she went through at the school and all of that, and hey, VGQ, she said what she said. She's entitled to walk like you belong and all that. Great. She said what she said. Victims guaranteed qualified. But the first thing I thought of, half of the Little Rock Nine, not quite 10, half of those 9 non-white students who so-called integrated that high school ended up in tragic arrangements. That's the first thing I thought of. And I went, hey, is Minnie Jean Brown Trickney, is she one of that 50% that ended up in a tragic arrangement with a white man? Absolutely. Anyway, that's not a crime, and the person who is most to blame is the white person. But still, that sort of thing consistently in the system of white supremacy, racism, and I bring that up because I say that has a massive influence on non-white people, how we think, speak, act. Even listening to what she said in that segment, she said what she said, but what did she say? She said specifically, she put numbers on it. She said there were 20 nice kids who would either speak to us or smile at us. There were about 300 really mean kids, but then there were 1,700 silent witnesses who stood by and said nothing. Now I'm just my ignorant Negro math. That's 2020. We got 300 racists. That's 1,700. I don't think that's evidence of not all white people is racist. If I'm being terrorized and they throw stuff at us and you ought to be hung and killed and shot and stabbed, and you got to get the National Guard to allow us to go to take geometry, PE, and you sit and watch this every day and you don't have, hey, Fred, come on now. You should leave them colored folks alone. Come on now, let them be. You said your piece, and none of us like this, but calm all that down. You don't never say that. You don't have nothing to do about this. You just, hey, another day. That to me is not evidence that not all white people is racist. So we moved to 1,700. We got 300 for show race soldiers, and then we got 1,700. They might be guilty by association. That's 2,000. We got 20 who were nice to us, who would, it was 20 nice kids who would either speak to us or smile at us. That I even have to like, wait a minute now. If I'm being spit on, and they even said, we read, Warriors Don't Cry, man. Elizabeth and Hazel, they throw glass on the ground in front of us. They get a glass bottle and throw it on the ground so it is in shatters, and then come and trip us so we fall on the ground and get cuts and everything. People watch this happen and don't say nothing. Man. And then you got 20 who smiled at us. I had a victim of racism. He said the absence of mistreatment is not good treatment. Profound. He was talking about exactly this context. Non-white people thinking that they found, hey, not all white people is racist. The absence of mistreatment is not good treatment. Just because a white person smiled at us? Are you serious? What did they say once you left? Come on. She said what she said. This is not to be construed as an attack for. I'm just saying, like, man, I've said forever, the bar seems to be very low metaphor for, hey, not all white peoples is racist. She smiled at me. She spoke to me. Didn't call me a nigger when she spoke either. That's it? Wow. Okay. I can see why we have not solved this problem. White people most to blame. White people most to blame. They spoke with Julian Blevins, 16-year-old in Chesterton, Indiana. I asked the but, because they gave out the data. They sounded like me in that one. They gave the percentages of the white people and the black people in Chesterton, Indiana. I already said, when I hear any location in Indiana, I think Jim Jones, and I immediately assume it is a sundown town, racially restricted region, unless I hear evidence to state otherwise. They did the opposite. They just confirmed what I thought originally. So then I went to the chat bot. I said, is Chesterton, is it a racially restricted region, sundown town? It said, historically recognized as having been a sundown town, a place where black people were unwelcome after dark. Unofficial laws, historically the town maintained an unofficial sundown law, meaning black people working or conducting business there were expected to leave by evening to avoid harassment by residents or local police. Demographics: the town remained almost entirely white for decades. Significant racial diversity only began to increase after 1964 following the establishment of the Bethlehem Steel Mill in nearby Burns Harbor. Documented incidents: past residents have recalled incidents of racial intimidation, such as racist graffiti on student lockers, that were often not reported in local news at the time. It goes on to give more information as well, but this is the context of where this all happened, with Julian Blevins saying that they left a note and that you're poor and you eat all the fried chicken and you don't deserve no gifts and you steal all the rest. And I shouldn't be laughing, but I mean, man, we are in a racially restricted region. I would just have to go, like, we're going to have to go and read, like, and see, did they have a racial purge here and drive out all the Negroes? Like, that's what, if I had a child and we're going to live here, that's what we're going to go and do every day. So you understand the whole history of why this is happening, and then we work on our code for what to do about all this. But, oh yeah, ain't no surprise, ain't no nothing. This is what white people have been doing here for a good 150 years, maybe longer. Chesterton. Let's see. The Chesterton is 1.5% Negro. Not 2. 1.5. They, speaking of doing the hate speech and racist graffiti, they said in Brooklyn, New York, a pair of 15-year-olds have been detained for putting the swastikas down. They said they put down, I think it was like a dozen or so on the Monday night, and then came back Tuesday and they dropped 57 swastikas on the playground. 57. Come on. Hey, I'm a privileged black male. I'm gonna tell you, I think I could have got to maybe about 30. I'm going to give you, maybe I could get to a baker's dozen, which would still mean I'm short of 40. And hey, don't you think we did enough? We showed them, didn't we? I mean, hey, it's dozens of I'm tired. My fingers hurt. We done ran out of paint too. We might have to go to the store again. We gonna get cut. Don't you think I'm a head out because we didn't. I ain't got 50 cents. We were supposed to get 50. I ain't gonna get to 50. I ain't gonna get to 40 either. I'm good. We did 3 dozen. We did the baker's dozen. I'm gonna call it because I ain't got my fingers ain't gonna allow me to get that high. 57, and they went out 2 nights in a row. Time and at 15 years old. Which of y'all went out 2 nights, even one night? We gonna go out. We gonna show Whitey. We gonna put what's half of 57? We'll take what, 20, 27, 28. We'll take 28. You went out and you wrote down 28 times. Cracker, no good crackers. 28 times. What does it mean to be white? And particularly, it'd even been better if they had classified the act of white supremacy, not so-called anti-Semitism. That's white supremacy, isn't it? Obeezy told us they was getting better. They arresting 15-year-olds for all this. Said the white children was doing better, and Sasha and Malia got all these great, not racist white children. Told you the bar is so low. Everybody, not all white peoples is racist. Let's see. They got the old white fella who broke into the Social Security building. I hope they got security at Social Security office. Robert Burke. They said he was a known troublemaker. They didn't say he was a known race soldier. He came in hurling slurs and insults and all the rest and told him it was freedom of speech. I don't think that's no dementia and, he got difficulties because he's old. I'm a race soldier. That's what I've been doing. He sound like the 15-year-olds that go out and put the swastikas up all day long. And they said, I'm a known troublemaker, racist. That's what I do. I get a little free time. I go out and look and name call, nigger this, spear chucker that. That's what I do. And if anything, I would say that sort of situation, that's why you do not want to look for a conflict. Fuller said that. You see something like that, Burke comes in here, known troublemaker, and he nigger this, and I don't like colored folks, and I'll call ICE myself. Time to leave. That's not no confrontation. I would even say that's not the time to pull out the phone. I'm going to start recording. It is time to go. Is he armed? I pull out my phone. He pulls out a machete, pulls out a ghost gun, even pulls out pepper spray. I pulled out my phone to pepper spray. I don't like that trade, man. White people are dangerous, and it could be more. All of that. That's another one I chalk up. End stage white supremacy. Last thing I'll get in, I'll check, see folks have thoughts, observations, questions. That segment about the rise in so-called hate crimes in Orange County. We've had a number of guests on talking about documentary films and even their so-called commission on race relations in Orange County, California. That's SoCal. Reminded me of Khalid Flemban, black male privileged who was found hanging from a playground in Orange County, 2012. Apparently they still talk about this case January 6th. Matter of fact, found in Laguna Hills, Orange County, January 6th, Insurrection Day, 2012. But he was found hanging from it was like a swing set at a playground where they said he committed suicide, and that was the conclusion of the police investigation, that Mr. Flemban, Flimban, that he committed suicide in 2012, and many others at a playground. What? Do they have video of this? Like, can we see? Come on. Anyway, but that in Orange County, like I said, we had guests on, white and non-white who reside in Orange County and talk about the years of white supremacy, racism in that part of California, so-called progressive California. But that reminded, say, hate crimes are increasing. And yeah, that would be a great time to bring up Mr. Flimban again, especially if I had black children. And matter of fact, I remember they had a report for Orange County race soldiers. They were firing acid darts at black homeowners in the area. They had one where some of the black children that lived there, race soldiers would chase them. Sound right out of James Lowen's Sundown book. But they would chase them when they were leaving school and trying to get home. Niggers will get you. But the acid dart, that was the thing. That acid dart. I said, hey, where do you go to obtain acid darts? You get them at Costco? Jeff Bezos, you put them on your wish list at Amazon? I got a wish list, Amazon, under Gus T. Renegade. I ain't never seen no acid darts on Amazon. Maybe I ain't look hard enough. I look, maybe they got the brand new for 2026. I can get that for Prime, but acid darts? I'm not making this up. You can go back and check the news reports. I think we played some of this in the archives. I'll go back and get the specific podcast, but they were shooting acid darts. Regular darts would have been, if somebody was, even throwing them with their hand. I think, whoa, you put somebody's eye out, cause serious damage or what have you. You might have to go get a tetanus shot and everything. Acid darts? What does it mean to be white? The number 720-716-7300. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. I'm going to get that report and make sure I'm not lying. Did they really have acid darts? Because that seems like so specific. I wouldn't be making that up if it wasn't true. Folks who dialed in with the hand up, if you have commentary to share, proceed.
Greetings, everyone. Can I be heard, Gus?
Retired firefighter in Florida. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I have 3 accounts over the past week. That's been 2 of them. The first 2 have been news in South Florida. This first one actually would be the when I watched it on the news. It was the first story. That's how I guess the news is making how important it was. A child, black child, looks no more in the house burglar system camera. The child looked no older than late elementary, early middle school child. Killed a duck. And this is in Fort Lauderdale. They put out a $5,000 reward for his capture for killing his duck. This was on the 18th of this year, of course. And 5,000. I just couldn't really figure that out on why would that be at the beginning of the news and it be that important. It was as though that the child murdered a person. And as of right now, they still haven't found this child that was on this camera chasing this duck and caught up with the duck, and reportedly they say he stomped the duck to death. A little bit later on, they did mention that the child should also be looked at by a physician as far as the why that the child would do something like that, and also the parent would be held responsible. But what got my attention was how it started out. As such as somebody who went out and murdered somebody and went into where they couldn't be found, and a $5,000 reward for the child, for that person's capture. That's what it sounded like to me, But this is a child, and if you saw the camera version on what I saw, you would say that this person could be somewhere around maybe 10 years old, 8 to 10 years old, something like that. Maybe even younger. But anyway, the second story is another child, black male child with autism. This also was a top story in the news and still is. And he was almost beaten to death by his mother's boyfriend. The boyfriend, he appeared to look like someone that's in the area on the earth that's called the Middle East. I was going through Google to see on what racial classification that law enforcement identified him as, but they would specifically tell me on it. The child actually was dead for about maybe about 2 or 3 minutes, they say. But either law enforcement or fire rescue got his heart back to beating. He still is not in what I would identify as stable condition, but he is still alive. This child. Last but not least, and also a few days later, they arrested the mom. Which is not unusual. I've actually been on calls like this, almost exactly like this, except for in this case that I went on, the suspect was a black male, but they do thoroughly investigate the mother, and in this case they arrested the mother. She turned herself in. The last but not least is once again, I've talked about it before, Richmond Heights displacement, the displacement of the original people that was meant to be residents of that area and their descendants. I actually went to a meeting. A couple of days ago. It was held at a church down the street from where I grew up at. I can throw a rock almost and break out a window. That's how close it was, this church. And basically, the strategy of the homeowners of these different little groups that they had, it appeared to me that they were accepting that they cannot stop the displacement of these people, and I would say mostly white people who speak Spanish, into the area. But their strategy is to get code enforcement to enforce the housing laws. For instance, there are chickens and roosters all over the place running around out in the street in Richmond Heights, and you can tell on who stays at that particular residence because there's about 6 or 7 or more cars that are of course it's not enough room for them to be in any type of driveway, so they park the cars in the yard, loud music, all times of day and night, that sort of thing. And at this meeting they had representatives. They had representatives from code enforcement. They had representatives, a representative that represented the mayor. It was a black female. Code enforcement, actually, the people who came representing the code enforcement were actually code enforcement people. The council person that represents Richmond Heights, he didn't show up. He sent a rep who did a poor presentation. Each person that came up, they were to be open for questions and answers, that sort of thing. And she didn't do too well. And matter of fact, the understanding homeowners is that the immediate representative does not want to be around the homeowners. Don't want to answer questions, anything like that, with the people who actually elected him into that job that he has. So it'll be more meetings and whatnot, and I may try to get down and get to a couple of them. And that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening.
Much obliged, retired firefighter in Florida. From the CBS News report, they have a $5,000 reward for the child who allegedly stomped on this duck down in South Florida. Now, Gusty, proud vegan, has been for at this point almost a decade at this point, and no signs of going back to get chitlins or some of that good country ham, get it on a biscuit, none of that. So I certainly do not approve of stomping on a duck. Like, that is not cool. They are kind of defenseless. And in fact, right, here. And in fact, just from our meager studies of mostly white serial killers, this is the sort of thing that they point out and say, this is like a little Jeff Dahmer, a little Mike Swango. You're going to go out and just stomp on a defenseless duck? What's wrong with you? He sit you down and examine you. You've been abused or some problems? That's not normal. It certainly is not correct behavior. That's not just behavior. You're supposed to be taken. Actually, I will say I'm generally very impressed with ducks. They are one of the few species on the planet. They can swim, they can walk, they can fly. How many of you you can't even walk straight, much less swim? All three. How many? Amazing. Man, to go even if they couldn't do that, still to go that's ridiculous. Come on. And that is what the system of white supremacy promotes. Disrespect of you gonna disrespect most of the people on the planet who are not white. What is it to stomp on a duck? They black too, right? Sometimes, or dark. At least they're not white. So yeah. Now, if they were albino, might have to lynch him. I don't care if it was a 5-year-old who did this. You done stomped on an albino duck. Oh my Lord. Woo. Much obliged, retired firefighter in Florida. Other folks who dialed in, if you have commentary to share, proceed.
May I be heard?
Octavius in New York. Yes, sir.
Greetings, Gus. Greetings, callers and listeners. First, start off with the Zimbabwe situation. I do think that it's literally insane that they are in such a situation where they have to deal with the colonizers, the same people that actually basically tortured, raped, and killed them and stole their land, and give them what compensation for being what would be considered just. It just doesn't make any sense. But this is the type of world we're living in. And it's the same kind of scenario where Haiti fought off its colonizers and took them out and then has to pay back the French. You know, and by the way, I'm still not even sure if they actually finished paying them back. I think they did, but I'm unsure. And the same thing happened here where slave owners were granted some kind of restitution, given money after they no longer had any slaves. Just insanity all across the board, but that's just part of the system. The victim in California who lost her home in the Palisades, it's a really sad situation. And I definitely felt, I felt for her in that moment when she was asking the question of what am I here for? It's a question I think a lot of non-white people may ask themselves when they get into tough spaces, tough situations where we have a hard time figuring out a pathway past the kind of racism and the pushback that we get every day. So I'm going to check on her I'm going to support her by sending her some funds or some coins myself. The church that was burnt down, I had a tough time listening to that because of the logic on it. They were willing to give forgiveness first without asking for justice. I can, VGQ, I could say like, hey, I don't quite agree with that, but I just think logically you should ask for justice first, and then you can grant them the forgiveness or whatever. You can give them forgiveness in whatever way. That's just my perspective and take on that one. Schools that you spoke about, there were a bunch of, not you spoke about, but the segments were really important in many ways. The manipulation of the educational system that, is usually the school to prison pipeline, but in this situation, it's a scenario where the students are being mistreated and told to put down information that was false about their parents being drug addicts and all these other things in order to gain access to higher education. You really have to question what is really higher education then, if that's what needs to be done to actually supposedly get ahead. And I'm curious of the demographic of that school because predominantly, from what I know, most teachers in America tend to be white women. It could be different. The demographics could be different at this school, but I did notice that they blame mainly like the principal or dean mainly for instituting this, but we had to have people following him, right? And I do think most of the time that tends to be white women. Again, I could be wrong. That's something to look into. Mary Jean Brown's story, it did strike me as interesting that she was being targeted by mainly the white women in the school. And I'm not sure if that was maybe because white men were interested in her, white boys were interested in her at that time. But I do think it's also a situation that's been consistent of white women having serious issues when it comes to targeting and disrespecting and mistreating black women, as we currently see right now in this regime, in this so-called government that's been an ongoing theme. But it does pay a little bit of connection there of how she was treated and why she was treated like that by the white women mainly. Going on to the Borough Park and the anti-Jewish markings all over the neighborhood. I actually used to live in that neighborhood in Brooklyn, and it's very close to Bensonhurst. I mean, it's literally right next to Bensonhurst, a certain section. And that section is also a section where Yusuf Hawkins was shot and killed. And in Yusuf Hawkins' story, it was basically they were going there to actually purchase an automobile that was for sale. But they were some say they were going to see a girl that they actually one of them had dated. And the killer knew they were coming on the block because the girl told them that they were coming on the block. So the so-called white males were waiting to attack them before they even knew it. Henceforth, the reason why they got ambushed as soon as they got there, and Yusuf Hawkins was killed. But after the murder of Hawkins, the police stated that the neighborhood girl was never involved and they were never dating. That seemed a little strange to me as a part of the story, by the way. But that area has always been a little bit violent. As to the numbers, when it comes to Jewish people being attacked or any kind of hate crimes towards them, I'm 110% sure it has risen. But I do think that non-white people, black people specifically, don't call in and file complaints about hate crimes in New York City. And I make that claim not because I'm unsure, but because when I file complaints myself, I have conversations with non-white females that are black, and I jokingly say, I'm pretty much one of the only brothers that call, right? And they'll laugh and they'll go, I don't know why we don't call. Everybody else calls and complains. We're not making complaints. And in that instance, I understood that we don't even utilize the basic resources that we may have at our fingertips just so that things get registered. But I think that's also because we don't feel anything will get done. So I somewhat understand, even though I still disagree. The last thing I'll say is an experience. I went to another DSA meeting. This DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, just to investigate. I'm still looking and paying attention to the various groups. And one of the conversations that came up that was interesting was developing some kind of community board for the police department, so that if anything occurred that they didn't like in the thing that the police did, that department would actually have to answer the community board, and some kind of organization will come through, and I don't know how, but they plan on putting a policy in that would investigate the situation and then have it be done outside of the police department, as opposed to the police department investigating themselves for wrongdoing. And he stated specifically in black and brown neighborhoods, which I thought was a good thing to actually hear. And they also are trying to put together a healthcare policy for free healthcare in New York State, which I also think is interesting. Because I do work at I work at a healthcare facility myself. That being said, one last anecdote is I do use AI as well, and I try to do a little joke. I typed in, show me an image or a video of a black man making money. The image they showed me was a black man sitting around a computer in an office, not a big corner office, it's a big room, just an office, typing while people are walking by him. And that was the image they had for me of a black man making money. I did the opposite and typed in white man making money, and it was an image of a white man with money raining from the sky, falling on top of him while he's having money, $100 bills in his hand. Just an anecdote of AI, and even how the system itself is a little tricky. I tried to test on other AI models, but that's one that I tried out and I thought was interesting. With that, I will mute my line. Thank you.
We don't want to see Leroy with too many nickels. Might be dangerous. Much obliged. Octavius in New York gave us the update on the Democratic Socialists of America. He said he went last week and they didn't have no literature, surprisingly. And so he's keeping it. Did you invest? Did you get any of the Mayor Eric Adams crypto coins? Did you take advantage?
No, not at all. I did, however, I have donated money to the American Association of Lawyers to help on some of the issues that people that are having legal problems right now with immigration are having, but that's about it.
Oh, right on. Black self-respect. Our black brother, former mayor of New York, he had his crypto coins available, and I think it didn't do too well immediately. Did not do too well, but that's another story. Much obliged. Our caller in New York. Other folks dialed in with a hand up. Did you have commentary you wanted to get in? Might have missed out. I guess last few minutes before we finish out for today. Let's see. The school situation. There were a number of different school situations. The young 16-year-old Julian Blevins, that was the one that was in Indiana, where he was on the track and field team. He said it was so frustrating that he wanted to give up track and field. Most of the time we've talked about athletics, it's been football, basketball, soccer, some of the more high profile, I would say, team sports for high school and college. I've said consistently, like, hey, if I had offspring, I would not want them in like organized competitive sports for high school and all of that. Just I would not be surprised if they have prop bets and DraftKings on the high school football games and basketball games soon, if they don't already. Just that alone, and then everything else, like the preparation for all of that. They got the Jerry Sandusky's and the coaches putting their hands on the children and all of that. The racism, it's so many components to it. If it's really, hey, let's get a little exercise. I want my child to work out. Health is important. Great. They do not have to be on the school's, basketball team, track team. None of that. I wasn't even factoring in. Oh yeah, and then you got to be around your other racist teammates and all of their torment and abuse. Like, no way. You can do exercises on your own, at home, neighborhood, with your attempted family. Like, it's lots of ways that you can get in healthy physical activity that does not include racial terrorism, sexual abuse, all the above, gambling, all the above, from being on some organized team that is going to be probably led directly by a racist white man, or having a lot of other racists on the team directly. That said, shout to Yusuf Hawkins. We've talked about that case before. Al Sharpton got involved in that case early on in his career, New York State. They went back and did a retrospective. This is like decades after Yusuf Hawkins' death at 16, murder at 16. They went and talked to white people about Al Sharpton and even Yusuf Hawkins' case. They went and talked to them like, oh yeah, do you know Yusuf Hawkins? Do you know who he is? And some of them were like, oh yeah, I remember that. That's so sad, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, Al Sharpton, he came to protest about Yusuf Hawkins. He thought that was terrible. They're like, what? Oh, I hate Al Sharpton. I hope he dies. This is on public radio where white people said this. Like, I hope he dies. Wishing death on Al Sharpton. Like, man, they didn't have, it's not like they had a reason, like he, messed them over so they couldn't get a business loan. Messed them over, so they lost got them evicted or what have you. Like, they didn't even have a reason. Just, nigger. Black person out talking about racism. Long live Al Sharpton. Said that for a long time. Any hoodles. Tentatively here for Wednesday, normal time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, white guest. And then we'll have the book club on Friday, Neutralizing Workplace Racism on Thursday. Reading more important than watching television. Astronomically more, and particularly reading about racism. Anywho, be here Wednesday. I'll update on social media. Just stay tuned. Sobriety would be best, especially under conditions of white supremacy racism. Share that with your offspring. We need high-functioning brain computers to solve the problem. It has been time. Creator, we ask that you remind us, stop saying not all white people are racist. Remind us, stop name-calling people classified as black. Remind us, stop producing throwaway offspring. Get those books together before you conceive that non-white child, so you're working on their library. They can have lots of books at the ready soon as they get here. Age appropriate too, but they'll also have some books and clothes that they can grow into. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in. No duck cruelty.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.